I hit the wrong button there. Hey, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Law and Order, the show here on YouTube and other platforms where a layman, me, and a lawyer, my good friend Ryan here, go through legal issues in our current politics and culture. It's been like 3 weeks. I've been busy. I know Ryan's been busy as well doing a lot of stuff. So it's great to be here. Little bit of a slow news cycle, but in a 3 week period of time, it still feels like we could talk for 7 hours with the stuff that's going on. So how have you been, Ryan?
I've been good, Rob. I've been good. Yeah, it's been a little quiet. People like to take the summer off. The Supreme Court takes the summer off. Congress takes the summer off, but not the great Rob Noerrder. I just noticed that we didn't have Law and Order tonight, I was going to be doing the review of your debate versus Lonerbox, which I just saw Modern Day Debate posted like an hour or two before we went live. So that's going to be something fun to watch down the road. I'm rooting for you.
I think I did very well, and it was fun. A little disappointing at the end of it. Lonerbox complained that people were too nice to him, but there's the left for you. You can't win either way. If you're a jerk, they'll complain. If you're nice, they'll complain. But you can check that out over in Modern Day Debate. Eventually, I'll put it up on my channel, but you know how it is. You do these things live. You want to let the people that put it on put it up on their channel first. And if you're interested, it's over on Modern Day Debate's YouTube channel. And the topic is Trump a fascist? I was debating Lonerbox, a left-winger from Scotland, I believe. So it's fun. I enjoyed it.
Would you believe that Modern Day Debate was trying to set up a debate with me and Lonerbox? I recall I mentioned it to you on court packing.
Yeah.
And then the court decided the birthright citizenship decision, and all of a sudden he didn't want to debate anymore. Isn't that weird? How this deeply held belief suddenly is no longer something that they want to debate. Funny.
Yeah, it's very strange. We're going to talk a little about court packing today as well. What I would say is the de facto spiritual leader at this point of the Democratic Party, once more, outlining exactly what me and you have been saying is exactly what the Democrat plan is. Pack the court with 4 seats, make D.C. Puerto Rico a state, and the Electoral College, all that shit. This is not an extreme position. They're telling you exactly what they're going to do. And when they win, they'll do it. So don't say you weren't warned. I like to think that we're trying our best to let people know that this is not some, hyperbolic, oh my goodness, one random person online saying this. This is the mainstream of the Democratic Party now. And it's amazing how all those people, they were really gung-ho to test the waters, weren't they? For these court packing debates. And then they poked their head out and got smacked. And now I think it's back to the drawing board. And I'm sure we'll hear more of it. I personally think that a lot of these people realize keeping your mouth shut, the James Carville solution, is actually the most effective. Just stop talking about it. Maybe in the primary, you got to put it out there for the more extremist Democrats to want to vote for you in the primary. But come the general election, I don't think they'll want to talk about it much.
Well, and we have to make this. That's why we have to make this a wedge issue, the way like abortion was a wedge issue historically. Like, because I think you're right. I think that as they get closer to generals, it's the same playbook you see with the DSA candidates, like Mamdani and Chevrolet and all these people. They try to run away from these very obvious statements that they've made that are, we should abolish ICE, we should have no deportations, we should defund the police, and these sort of things. And then they say, oh, I don't mean it anymore. No, I'm very moderate. And then they get in power and they do all the things that you suspected that all along they were going to do. And I think, the role that some people like you and me can have, Rob, is that we can force these conversations where it's like, no, let's talk about court packing, right? Like, are you pro court packing? Are you pro abolishing the Electoral College? Because these are not small shifts. These are part of a large movement to really abolish the structure and spirit of the American system. And I've been doing some research on this, and I'm sure it's going to come up in the show, Rob, but it's going to be the theme of the political season for sure. So we called it early, and you guys were here to see it. So go out and tell the people.
Yeah, it's not a winning issue for them, but it's definitely a winning issue for their base. And one thing you got to tip your cap to the Democrats, they're very good at setting a narrative. They always are. Like, for example, we still hear today, anytime there's an election, you can almost set your watch to it. The mainstream media is going to ask every single Republican candidate, do you believe Trump lost the 2020 election? Every time. They'll ask that question until 2034, 2038. Trust me. They have an attack. They know that the American people, by and large, don't have the stomach for that, like the normie voters. And so they're going to keep hammering that home, and the media will help them. The left-wing media, the New York Times, the Sunday shows on ABC, Meet the Press, etc., they set the narrative. And much like we saw with the Fauci stuff, they're going to ignore the stories that are bad for Democrats. So it's up to people like us, and hopefully the Republicans take a cue from this that are actually running and actually have more influence, and they start aggressively pushing this and make this a key issue every single time. So I remind you all, as we start to get into our first story here, if you send super chats in on either Ryan or my's channel, we promise we'll get to them. So if there's a pressing question you have, a disagreement, whatever, feel free to send it in via super chat.
Yeah. So Rob, I'm getting told that I have a some kind of lag on my side. I'm trying to see if I can figure out what that is. It doesn't.
You look good to me. Like,
yeah,
wow.
you look well. Thanks, Rob. I appreciate that. You're a handsome fellow, Rob.
Thank
That's
you.
not what I was getting at. That's not what I was getting at, Rob. No, but it seems like it's cleared up at least.
Okay.
The data on my side looks okay. I just was chat was talking about it, and I had an issue with buffering last night for some reason. So
someone mentioned that for me as well. I don't know. Who knows what's going on? Iran? Are they attacking our infrastructure?
YouTube's a small company. They can't really keep the lights on,
Yeah, it's tough. So let's jump in. I think the story, if I had to guess, that most normies in a legal perspective are interested in today, in the past week or so, would be Dr. Fauci. I think that COVID was a huge deal to people, that in many ways, a lot of these political stories we talk to, there's like degrees of separation between how a story, like for example, we might think birthright citizenship was a huge deal, and it was. That case was a huge deal. But when you talk to your neighbor that's like, I can't afford groceries, there's degrees of separation from that court decision and what affects them every day. COVID was different. COVID was the government, like politics in your face to everyone in this country. The decisions that were being made directly affected each and every person in different ways around the country. And I think a lot of people are outraged is what they see with Fauci. Of course, his diary came out. It makes him look like a megalomaniac. It shows that they were half-assing it, just flying by the seat of their pants. He was getting contradictory information about where the virus came from, what would be effective in private. He was admitting in private in his diary that the vaccine wouldn't give you immunity. He comes across as someone who's a narcissist, who's more concerned about his own image and how famous he's becoming rather than the horrible situation that's going on, largely because of the policies he's pushing. But he was given immunity. Then he testifies in front of the committee there.
Well, he was pardoned, which is more.
Oh, yeah. Yes, my bad. He testifies in front of Rand Paul's committee and basically takes the fifth 111 times. So I think the base level question that most people have, including myself legally, is he in legal trouble? Is there A, could the pardon go away? Or B, some people are suggesting perhaps he could be charged with contempt because you can't plead the fifth if you're pardoned. What do you think on the possible legal jeopardy in any of those scenarios with Fauci?
So there's a few layers to this. The first is he was given a pardon. It's a fairly blanket pardon. It basically says, from 2014 to 2025, I'm getting the date slightly off, I think, but for a 10-year period, any crimes that could have occurred that were arising from or related to his service. And arising from or related to is legalese for maximum breadth, right? It doesn't even have to be something that is directly like something that you did in your job. It just has to be related to your job. It's the biggest widest, most broad possible language for that sort of thing. So it's very difficult to see how he would not have an active pardon that prevents him from having criminal liability for anything that he did during that time period on a federal level. On a state level, the president cannot pardon state crimes. And Florida and Louisiana and Alabama are all currently investigating him. So it is possible, if they can come up with a legal theory on a state level, that he would have some kind of prosecution related to the work he did when he was in office. But on the federal level, there's basically no chance of that happening. I know that there's some people in the law tube spheres. I know Following Pro and I are cool. He's a nice guy. He has kind of a very novel theory about how maybe you could get around the pardon in this case. I'd call that a true legal Hail Mary. You're talking about a 98, 99% to 1. The odds that this Supreme Court would undo a presidential pardon are approach zero. They're very serious about executive power, and they're not going to chop into the executive power in that way. So I think that's basically a non-starter. Contempt is trickier, and I'm monologuing, so feel free to interrupt whenever you want. Contempt is trickier. The argument there is he was called to Congress to testify, and he didn't provide any information. He wouldn't answer any questions. But he took the Fifth Amendment. And the Fifth Amendment means that you cannot be forced to testify if it's going to risk incriminating yourself and exposing you to criminal liability. The argument that people want to make is, well, he can't be exposed to criminal liability because he can't be charged federally. So if someone has immunity, this happens all the time. It actually happened with in the Tyler Robinson case. Lance Twiggs could be forced to testify because he was given immunity. So he can't take the Fifth because he has immunity. The problem here is that Fauci is being investigated by states. So he has a pretty good argument that he can say, well, I'm taking the Fifth because I don't want to give Florida, Louisiana, and Alabama ammunition to come after me in state court. And that is a kind of down the middle winning argument. So I don't think they're going to get him for that. The only thing that I think they might be able to get him for, and I wouldn't call this a good odds, but the only thing is he took the Fifth for questions like, what day of the week is it? He took the Fifth. What color is the carpet? He took the Fifth. Now, there's no realistic probability that answering those questions would in any way, shape, or form expose you to criminal liability. So maybe they could get a contempt, they could bring a contempt charge, but that seems like a pretty thin branch, and I wouldn't put too much weight on it, to be honest.
So, yeah, going in the order of those three things, I completely agree with the pardon. I think that it's pie in the sky that people think that this pardon from Biden or a litany of other ones that he did on the eve of leaving. And, we know that allegedly there was an auto pen. I think even if that's true, I cannot see the court revoking it. They've historically been pretty lenient when it comes with pardoning, right? Like I'm questioning. I think that probably like someone could stand up and say, I paid Biden to pardon me and he agreed, and that would stick, right? That's like how complete the pardoning power is. Now it would hurt you politically, theoretically, but as far as criminally, I don't, or legally, I don't see them revoking it.
Yeah, I mean, as a reminder to the audience, when they decided the presidential immunity decision, and they were defining what a core and exclusive executive power is, one of the examples they gave of the most clear-cut exclusive executive powers that neither Congress nor the court has power to review was the pardon. So the court's already gone on record saying that they're not going to touch this. So it would be shocking if they changed their mind.
And then to further complicate matters, even with any like legal theory that you may come up where he had to officially sign the auto pen doesn't count, I think what you would be likely to see is courts would be sympathetic to the fact that Biden's still alive and would probably be like, no, I'm okay with those pardons. It would be different if Biden was out there like, wait, what? No, I didn't sign off on that. That would be a different story. But seeing as how he's clearly going to take the stance of, no, I was okay with those, I just don't think there's a chance at all that he's charged with anything from his official capacity from 2014 on. So that's out. The contempt, yeah, I largely agree with you there. I don't think that there's going to be a contempt charge for the reasons you said. Here's another reason. I don't know if I'm interested to see what you think about this. Can he make the argument? Because just so people know, the fifth is your Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination legally. If you're given immunity, you can't incriminate yourself legally, right? Now, you already mentioned, yeah, but he still could by the state. He's not given immunity there. I think another argument that it would be interesting, it would be if he said, yeah, but you're going to challenge the pardon. So let's say that I testify and I'm like, okay, I'll be completely an open book because I can no longer be charged federally. And then you go to court and rule, actually, Biden's pardon didn't exist. Now I've incriminated myself. And so that's something that Rand Paul and others are talking about. They're going to challenge this pardon. So, yeah, I'm going to operate as if I could potentially lose that case and the pardon could go away. And so I'm still allowed to plead the fifth. And I think, for me, not a legal scholar or a lawyer, that's a compelling argument. It's like, yeah, if there's even the slightest chance that you think there could be a lawsuit to revoke the pardon, you should be allowed to plead the fifth to not incriminate yourself.
At the very least, a court would consider, well, okay, why don't I just hold this action in abeyance? We'll stay. You want contempt? I'll stay this case, and we'll see how the pardon challenge goes. Now, the pardon challenge is a loser, so it will inevitably lose. But that they can just hold off on it and then say, okay, yeah, if the pardon challenge is successful, then he shouldn't have to testify. And if you win, then we have that situation. And if you lose, then we can revisit it late at that point. But I mean, that's the most I could imagine a court doing. I couldn't imagine them granting contempt, except for maybe those very narrow questions about like what day of the week is it, that sort of thing. But even there, when someone gets held in contempt, it's typically because they didn't show up at all. Like they just say, I'm not coming to Congress. But he did show up. He did like go through the motions. So that doesn't seem likely to me. Oh, and if you wanted a third reason why it's not going to happen, guess where you have to enforce contempt of Congress?
It would be
the federal district for Washington, D.C. Yeah. So if you can imagine bringing that prosecution in that district for this contempt proceeding, I think that's going to be the odds are very low that's a very favorable jurisdiction for Fauci. So I would not think that's a high probability play. Now, Congress is pretty angry, so I think they're going to try. I just don't think their odds are I think their odds are fairly remote. They'll try.
I don't mind them trying, right? I don't think they'll be successful. I think that trying, though, has the secondary effect of hopefully keeping this in people's mind politically. Forget about legally, but politically, because I think this is a winning issue of just how authoritarian and smug Fauci was. And it really is a story. There are certain stories that happen that it's easy to connect, like I was saying at the beginning of this segment, with the average person. Me and you might talk about birthright citizenship, or we might talk about like scandals like the Biden laptop. These are oftentimes very difficult. And it isn't even just an argument of like the average person's IQ or intelligence. It's just things that you have to really dive in. And the average 9-to-5 worker isn't going to spend a lot of time looking into legal scholars and birthright citizenship and what was being said in 1850 or Burisma. And they're not going to look in. COVID's easy to understand. It was corrupt. It affected people in negative ways. Fauci, the diary's easy to understand. This is a winning story. And it's not something that I'm suggesting, we should artificially inflate because it's a win for my side. I think it's one of the most egregious acts that I've seen in my life, with the violation of people's rights, the treating people like pariahs, the sort of worshiping of the, Fauci and the science, the media going along with it, the Democrats going along with it. And for me, it's a huge warning sign to like tyranny that we see in books like Brave New World or 1984. So I think that anything they could do to keep this story in the public eye, even if that means pushing for legal measures that they have a very small chance of winning, I still think is worthwhile. And you could easily parlay a loss to this into a blame of the Democrats. Look, they pardoned this guy. They knew what he was up to. They ruined your fucking life. Your parents died and you weren't allowed to have a funeral. Your children weren't allowed to have prom. They weren't allowed to have a graduation. And meanwhile, they pardoned this guy because they fucking knew that he was lying the whole time. right? And so now we can't hold him legally accountable. That's who the Democrats are. So I hope, even though I think it is incredibly bleak that there will be legal consequences, the only potential legal consequence I could see is if Fauci ends up opening his mouth in official proceeding and lies, which I think it's evident he's just going to plead the fifth to everything at this point, or if he speaks publicly. I don't know. Maybe you can speak to this. There was an argument that was being made about James Comey, potentially in Florida, about the furtherance of concealing a crime. And so the statute of limitations, they would say, sort of runs out if you continue to conceal the crime in the future. So, for example, if he would go on MSNBC and say, no one ever deleted material. We didn't violate, FISA request intentionally, anything like that. And you can prove he's lying. Even though it's not a crime to lie to the media, there could be some artful way that they're like, this is him continuing to further a crime with other people who did hide this information from sort of FARA request. What do I keep saying? FISA request. So maybe there's a potential there.
Yeah,
but that would be a long shot.
It's a long shot. Yeah, because it's continuing a crime that would have occurred during the pardon window. So, even on its own face, the logic is tenuous. You could maybe get artful about it and give it a shot, but I would call that. I think it's a low probability event, but I do think your read on the politics is right, because I think you and I both have this experience where if you're talking to a lay person or somebody who doesn't watch streams like ours all the time, explaining to them the real risks of court packing and the real tyrannical ramifications of the policies that people are throwing around there is actually kind of tricky. Like you need to have their attention for 5 or 10 minutes to kind of give them the pitch. Whereas if you go back and you say, like, remember when you weren't allowed to go outside? Remember when you had to show your private health information to buy a cup of coffee?
Yep.
Remember that? Remember when that happened? Well, that was what they did the last time they were in office. Well, you think they'd be shy about doing something now? And what, you think that they said it was for an emergency? You think that's going to hold them back? You don't think that they are going to say that Trump's win, Trump's Supreme Court picks, Trump's policies are emergencies that require some kind of drastic measure? This is, it's all just utterances after all. Like, I do think if you can give them the visceral feeling of COVID, and then you say, I'm worried that the left's going to do something overtly tyrannical if they're given power, I think that resonates differently. And that is a powerful political point, even if legally I don't think it's going anywhere.
Yeah, I totally agree. Some super chats on your end. Mark Ferrara, thanks so much, says 10 joules, press F. I assume each joule's worth like, what, 1 Bitcoin? Done. Well done.
10 Bitcoin. Well done.
10 Bitcoins. Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, look at that.
Golly. By the way, the winner of the official non-controversial winner of our first ever Blaster Dino Battle Invitational gives 20
Oh
bucks.
my God, this Paige Shill.
Yeah.
How many shekels did they give you?
That's
Gully?
right. Thank you, Gully.
Shekels did they give you for your Dinobot?
Yes.
Your Dinobot tainted victory. Oh, sorry.
Thank you so much for the 20, Gully. No collusion whatsoever. Says, wouldn't the Fifth Amendment just be ideological bullshit, according to Fauci? Well, I mean, it's interesting. Not just Fauci, but so many of these people, like, look, people complain about Trump having a few quotes like, whoa, the Constitution doesn't matter. By no means do I think that Trump's someone who's ideologically a constitutionalist. But the left shits on the Constitution all the time. And then, obviously, when it's convenient for them, they're like, whoa. So, yeah, I'm sure Fauci, he's the science, so he's above the Constitution.
Well, this is the joke of the whole thing. So one of the things I was doing during this down period politically is I've been deep diving progressivism and trying to refine my arguments and get a bit more poignant in the way I can talk about these things. And the kind of the grandfather of American progressivism, Woodrow Wilson, was famous for saying that we need to progress beyond the values of the Declaration of Independence and a rigid constitution so that we could be administered by experts like Fauci, right? Like, so, I mean, the idea that we should move beyond our traditions and our American values so that the benign, glorious experts can rule us from on high is that's the heart and soul of the progressive movement, always has been. So for them to then later say, "Oh, well, the right doesn't care about the Constitution," is a little bit of a joke. They invented not giving a shit about the Constitution. That was in fact the hallmark of their entire movement. And here we are today, and it's the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, well, here, this dovetails into Lavin, $10, says, unfortunately, all the Fauci stuff is political grandstanding, so the Republicans can have their sound bites and clips for campaign season. Nothing will ever happen to Fauci. Look, yes, and this criticism, I think, is warranted of Republicans 99% of the time. Unfortunately, in this particular case, I don't think you could chalk this up to, like, Republicans dropping the ball, which is why Fauci's going to get away with it. The pardons are pretty Loctite. So in this particular case, all they could do is make political hay. It's different than like with Comey or something like that, or someone maybe Birx or Mayorkas, you could say. They could have went after Mayorkas for legal issues because he didn't receive a pardon. But I don't know. For here, look, I'll be the first to criticize the shit out of Republicans for not actually going after corruption. I find it difficult to complain that, like, well, of course they won't do anything to Fauci. They can't.
Yeah,
legally. So
it would be there just is no federally there is no legal remedy. I am not an expert in Florida, Alabama, or Louisiana law. They seem to think they can do something, and they're investigating. I'm skeptical. I'm not sure what jurisdiction Florida has over Fauci for his work in a federal capacity. That seems like a stretch to me, but I don't know. That's not my area. So they could give it a college try, but I wouldn't get your hopes up.
Yeah. Jefferson, on your end, $2 says lockdowns were Japanese internment on steroids. Totally agree.
It was pretty wild. And I really remember. Because I was living at the time in Jersey City. I don't anymore, but at the time I was in Jersey City. And Jersey City was like relatively lax compared to New York City. So when I had to go into the city for work, you'd have this experience where to get a cup of coffee, you would have to show a vaccine passport, or you couldn't go inside to buy coffee. And just like think about that for a second. Like you weren't allowed in a shop without showing private health data. That's unthinkable.
It was out of control. Like I could do a 12-hour show easily on just how screwed up everything was, and just most of it just my state of Pennsylvania. There were allegations, for example, initially when they were talking about essential businesses being able to be kept open. I remember in one particular town, a local chocolate store was allowed to remain open. Happened to be a huge donor to the state senator who was a Democrat in that county. So the chocolate store was essential. The hardware store right next to it, not essential. So, heaven forbid you have a plumbing issue. Hey, deal with it. But if you have a late night craving for some semi-sweet chocolate, well, that's essential. The stories are just, I mean, tragic. The stories here are still people, they say 50% of businesses that shut down during COVID will never reopen again. The fraud that went into all the money, the PPP loans, etc., hundreds of billions of dollars of fraud that went out, the inflation that came about as a result of a lot of that we're still trying to dig out of a hole. I said this from the get-go. I said there were three things that were scary about COVID to us. One was the disease itself. I had no idea if it would kill 1,000 people or 1,000,000 people or more. I don't know, but we would be able to overcome that as a country. The second is the measures that we took against COVID, and they were going to be more significant than COVID itself. It was going to crush us economically. It was going to crush mental health for people. It was going to crush physical health for people, and all of that's borne out, and we're still dealing with the consequences. But the third, which we couldn't survive, is if this sets the precedent that we're willing to give up our basic rights anytime there's an unknown disease, that's it. They'll do it over climate change. They'll do it over West Nile. They'll do it over bird flu. It doesn't matter, right? Once they realize that they could decide when to lock you down and when to relieve pressure, that's it. That's the game. And, for me, the sad part was watching so many conservatives go along with it. And to me, that was really, because I expect big government socialists to say, yes, give the government control over when you could leave your house. But watching like small government conservatives be like, well, 15 days to slow the spread. For me, it was the greatest authoritarian experiment I've ever seen. And to this day, you know, I worked in healthcare with people with autism. Their lives were irreparably damaged. People I worked with whose parents was the most important things in their lives. These autistic people, that parents died alone in homes for 2 years while they weren't able to visit. It's just insanity. And it really, for me, you know, I was a little more animated today in the extravaganza talking about it. It's a bit of a different show. But for me, when people say, why do you still focus on this? Why are you angry about it? My question is, why aren't you? If that's not enough to fire you up about the dangers of authoritarianism and just trusting blindly in the government and giving them censorship power and the power to lock you down, nothing ever will be. And so, you know,
yeah, I mean, it was actually a big part of the reason, not the only part, but a big part of the reason I decided to start doing, you know, speaking publicly about stuff. Because, you know, I could have been happily doing legal work and, you know, making a very good living and not talking about any of this stuff. But around that time during the Biden administration, I had shifted from being a Democrat to being a, you know, a centrist, if you were going to call it an independent or whatever you call it. And then the vaccine mandate came out. And my gut reaction was like, over my dead body. Like, what right-leaning legal action group do I need to join to combat the idea that the president can sign a piece of paper and make 100 million Americans make a health decision on the basis of, you know, his inherent authority, executive? It was such an enormous overreach that I felt like I needed, you know, as like, you know, an attorney who could very easily have not been put my hat in the public arena with all the downsides that come with that. I felt like I had to say something about it because it was so far beyond the pale. And then to dovetail back to the court packing issue, to eventually realize that the court as presently constituted with Justice Gorsuch and his major questions doctrine would actually protect us from that sort of thing. That there was actually a functioning branch of government that was going to protect us from that type of overreach, and that they immediately got a target on their back. And here we are. They're trying to undo the one branch of government that saved us from that particular tyranny. So yeah, I mean, this is an issue I care deeply about, and I think most people care deeply about. I know I've heard you talk about it. I remember I asked Jake Rattlesnake about it. He was like, he said the same thing. He absolutely would not be in media were it not for COVID.
They had COVID camps in Australia. I remember watching media in Australia where they're like, the camps aren't that bad. Let's take you through a tour. They literally imprisoned people. Like, just because they didn't want to take an experimental medication. And not only did they get away with it legally, but largely they've gotten away with it politically and culturally, where there hasn't been consequences. And it's one of the most frustrating things. All of the people that sort of went on board with this, they just act like it never happened. It's a long time. The same people that will scream to you about January 6th being like this seminal moment or, you know, other shit, you know, they'll be like, they act like COVID. That was a long time ago. They act like it was in the 1800s. It's like, no, that was you people. People embrace this. The people you voted for. And not only have you gotten away with it culturally, now you want more power. You want to pack the courts. You want more power to be like, yeah, fuck it. And it doesn't, it's worse. The charitable viewing of it is they did all this shit just guessing. I don't know, maybe. But when you read Fauci's diary, and if you just a little bit read between the lines, they knew that a lot of this was bullshit. It was control. It's intoxicating to have total control over a people. How convenient. In the name of health, public health, they were like, well, the federal government needs to pressure social media to censor even true information about vaccines and stuff. It's all in the name of public health. And oh, by the way, while we're at it, let's also censor questions about the 2020 election. You know, like, that's what this bore out. One of the largest transfers of wealth. Like I said, small businesses shut down. Everything about this just unbelievable. And to live through it, and I mean, it's astonishing to me. Of all the things I've lived through, their news cycle so fast. Like, assassination attempt against Trump. 2 weeks later, it's out of the news. Jimmy Kimmel's the victim, you know, or with the Charlie Kirk assassination. But COVID's the one thing where I'm like, I can't believe people moved on. I can't believe that people just are willing to be like, you know, and I get it. There's not going to be legal consequences, but my goodness, if that didn't show you where we're heading quickly as a country, I don't think anything will wake people up. So,
Well, the other thing it did is it kind of exposed the underbelly of how progressivism has captured certain institutions in the country, right? Where I remember the teachers unions in particular. I'm a former teacher, so I'm somewhat plugged into these areas. But I remember the LA teachers union in particular, the union head, she said basically along the lines of something that the teachers won't, and I think Chicago said the same thing or something similar. The teachers won't come back to work, not just until COVID is fixed, but until we have broader social justice. We have the strike will continue until the city complies with this broad mission of social justice, which has nothing to do with COVID, really. And this is where you see the ugly head rearing, right? Like, there's an emergency. And what does the emergency give? Power. And what do we do with the power? We advance the progressive agenda. And then when we're done advancing it, we're going to call it the status quo. And if you try to go against the status quo, then you're a reactionary, right? Like they're going to roll up the carpet behind them, and you're far right or extremist or reactionary if you are attempting to undo any of the damage that was done in the name of progress. And by the way, I'm not opposed to progress per se, but there's progress towards the American ideal, and then there's progress towards whatever nonsense justice values they've constructed, which are just the mere policy whims of the day. And they march down these roads, and then we're left wondering what the hell happened a little while later. And they'll look at you like you're crazy when you say, I remember when it didn't used to be this way. You can't memory hold me. You can't gaslight me. I remember that it wasn't always like this. You don't call this the status quo and think that I'm insane. I was there. And this is, I find, a very frustrating tendency where every time there's an ounce of power, it just leads to a new rebranding of whatever they've done as the inevitable arc of justice. Whereas I think, you and I look back and we say, God, that was horrifying overreach, not something to be celebrated. Or I think some of them would say, my God, if you ask a progressive, they'd say like, oh my God, then we weren't successful enough with our lockdowns. Yep. Some people weren't complying. We didn't have enough power. Next time we need way more power in order to succeed with our agenda in the case of another emergency. And by God, Rob, there'll be another emergency. I guarantee it.
Yep. On your side, Johnny Dollar, 10 joules says happy poop.
All right.
Thank you. Matt Budaganis, on your side, member for 2 months, says treat people who advocate for court packing like they treat people who use the gamer word. Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it is an extreme position that is now mainstreamed in the Democratic Party and on the left. And I do think that we ought to treat it as a dangerous extreme position.
Yeah.
There's no doubt. You want to play that clip? While we're talking about court packing?
Let's do it. But before we do, though, just one thought on this thing that Matt brought up. It's a good one. You're going to hear a lot of people make the following argument. They're going to say, well, the left is combating the DSA. The Democrat, the centers are combating the DSA the way the right failed to combat MAGA. That's a false analogy. The DSA is not analogous to MAGA. Communism is analogous, if you're talking about like anti-American extreme movements, to Nazism, right? The Austrian painters have been combated by the right vigorously for years and years and years.
They have no power whatsoever in politics.
No power, none. So communism is not morally equivalent to current right-wing politics. It is much, much worse. And they've forgotten that in fact, I don't think they believe. I think they think communism is a lovely idea that just hasn't been implemented successfully. And that's why if it could be implemented, they'd be happy to do it. And this is why the left will not be able to resist the DSA types long term. They won't, because they don't view it as a problem, but they're going to tell you. They're going to tell you that you're the extremist. And this is why when they have these extreme messaging, we need to consistently call it out. Like what you're talking about is more extreme than anything I'm advocating for.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like when it comes to some of these people on the left that we've talked with, like I find it hilarious to watch the infighting that like Team Hassan's having with Team Destiny. Destiny's saying that like he's the moderate position because Hassan's basically had Somali pirates on and cheered for them and cheered for terrorism and et cetera, et cetera. Destiny said the worst thing that could happen was the bullet missing Trump. He said that if you're conservative, you get shot at a Trump rally, you're effing around and finding out. He said all conservatives should fear for their life to be in public. That's the moderate position. That's the moderate position. The moderate position on the left is pack the courts, add states, give the legislator control over, punishment powers over the justices. That's moderate to them. They just are having a disagreement on whether or not basically we should go full commie or not. But when it comes to the tools that they seek to use to entrench themselves in power and authoritarianism, they agree on that. Mm-hmm. It's just so it's amazing to me. And by the way, they're not combating communism. It's winning. Right now, I think that there is no doubt in my mind. I'm not saying that the DSA is going to clean up in 2026 or 2028, but the momentum's certainly there. Right now, if you were like, who are the voices that matter in the Democratic Party? Right now, number one's Mamdani, AOC. Like, those are the people. Mm-hmm. Anybody, what's Chuck Schumer up to? How about Pelosi?
Yeah.
Right?
Well, look, I mean, what you really have on the left is, and they'll protest this, but it's just true, so I'm going to say it anyway. You have the people who want communism quickly and the people who want communism slowly. And that's really the categories. Now, they don't know, neither of them will admit it, but that's where they are, and that's what they're doing.
Yeah. All right, so speaking of court packing, I think this is the clip that I'm familiar with. Here is the last presidential candidate, granted, no one voted for her in a primary, but still instilled by the Democratic Party in their non-democratic ways, Kamala Harris. And I think in this clip, she's going to discuss court packing.
Well, but wait, Rob, when I, in my debate with Pisco, said that this was the position she held and was the position of the Democratic Party, that there was a Democratic plan to pack the court, pack the Senate, to break the filibuster, I was told by Pisco and Josiah that I was spreading conspiracy theories, that this was just, that I was absolutely fabricating this sort of thing. There's no way that she came out and just completely said all the things that I said she believed. That couldn't be the case.
So we have people like James Carville, that was like at one point the strategic leader or one of the strategic leaders of the Democratic Party. We have people that are like considered moderate, working across the aisle, people like Ro Khanna that's came out and advocated for this exact policy. We have their very last presidential candidate who's likely to try to run again talking about this. You would be more hard-pressed to find a mainstream Democrat condemning this than you would to actually find and throw a rock and hit one that's advocating for this. So let's hear what happened with Kamala this time, if she fell out of the coconut tree or what. Here we go.
Controversial coming from me in particular, we need to revisit the Electoral College. We need to revisit the point of expanding the court to 13 justices like we have 13 district courts. We need to revisit, if they so want, statehood for Puerto Rico and D.C.
Yes.
If we regain control of the Senate, I served on this committee, the Senate Judiciary Committee, when I was in the Senate. Only the second black woman elected to the United States Senate after Carol Moseley Braun. And the Senate Judiciary Committee has the power to create rules for its committee that don't have to go to the whole Senate for a vote and worry about filibuster and all of that. We should demand, if we win back the Senate, that the Senate Judiciary Committee have the strength to put in place rules that would include, if a nominee for a federal court or the Supreme Court comes before them and starts lying, that they hold them in contempt. If they refuse to give information for which the committee righteously requires, they think about accountability and consequence, and that those members of the Senate Judiciary Committee have the courage, because we require it, to hold people accountable who are misleading intentionally.
So you really embrace an aggressive agenda. We Wednesday night.
We could play more there.
Wait a minute, Rob. I was trying to keep track there. It sounds like she was in favor of court expansion.
Mm-hmm.
She was in favor of packing the Senate by adding D.C. and Puerto Rico as states. She was in favor of bypassing the filibuster to create a binding code of ethics that could be used to punish future justices if it is believed that they lied about something down the road, i.e. have bad behavior. And then she actually added something that I didn't even have on my list in the debate with Pisco, that because it wasn't directly related to court packing, that she was saying that we should look at the Electoral College too. So she added a fourth to that. That couldn't possibly be right, Rob. Surely she didn't just confirm all of the predictions that you and I made for where she was and what the Democratic Party was doing. That couldn't possibly be it, right, Rob?
And we were told over and over that this, not just by those people, but for years prior to this, when we would bring up, someone like me would bring this up, that they want to get rid of the Electoral College and add new states, and they want legislative rules to go after conservative justice they don't like, and they want to pack the court. Nonsense conspiracy theory. Just like when we were told over and over that it was a racist conspiracy theory to say that they want to give citizenship to illegals so that they could be able to basically have them as a reliable voting bloc. And we're still told that's bullshit, that's racist. Even though I could pull up a video right now of Chuck Schumer saying going into the 2024 election, the goal is to ultimately give all illegals a pathway to citizenship. The Democrats' ideas are not popular. And so what they want to do is change the rules of the game in as many ways as possible so that they're able to take this country from the people that don't like their unpopular positions. That's the game. That's the authoritarian. Are there legal ways that they could do this? Sure. You can follow the Constitution, but it doesn't mean that it's not exactly what it appears to be, an authoritarian power grab. That's what this is. And the fact that Republicans aren't doing a compelling job of pointing out exactly what they're suggesting in totality, which is the key. And you'll notice, like, when both of us debated Pisco, what he tries to do is like, oh, no, we just think that we call what happened to Merrick Garland court packing, so we get to do one back. That's not the plan. The plan's to add 4 and to get rid of the Electoral College and to add 2 states and to have the Senate, have power to punish what they call lies. Remember, they said it was a lie that the virus came from Wuhan. They said it was a lie that Trump didn't collude with Russia. Right? When they say we could punish people that were dishonest, what they're going to do is they're going to say, would you overturn Roe v. Wade? Would you overturn Obergefell, gay marriage, right? And if they're like, well, I think precedent's important and give a vague answer, and then they later hear a case and then rule in favor of that, they'll say, that doesn't count. You lied. You said precedent was important, and yet you overruled precedent. By the way, if Democrats do that, they'll be like, oh, that's perfectly reasonable. Of course, they heard the case. They changed their mind. Just saying that precedent's important doesn't mean that you always have to follow it. And that's what this will be. And the difference between the Republicans and the Democrats are they'll do it. There is zero doubt in my mind. If the Democrats get the Senate, the House, and the presidency going into 2028, they're going to do all this shit. They're going to make it, and then they're going to import 10 million more people. And they're going to use their position to start to grant amnesty. And they're going to use the PAC court to say that even if they would lose, which will be nigh on impossible because of the way they're stacking the game, that you can't deport these people because the court's going to be very liberal. They're going to appoint these people that are like, nope, you don't have the right to deport any of these people. And that'll be the end of the country. It'll enshrine them in power for a generation. And inevitably, it will result in the country going in such a radically different direction, it may be impossible through elections or anything like that to ever solve the case. That we're on the precipice of that.
Well, so I think I actually cracked the code on this. I was doing some research. I think I cracked the code on this. What the Democrats want is the one thing our founders were most afraid of, most terrified of, which is truly populist democracy. And what I mean by that is if you look at the entirety of the founding, the Federalist Papers, the Declaration, the Constitution, everything they did was to prevent mob rule because the founders were deeply concerned that mob rule would be just as tyrannical as an emperor or a king. If you have 51% of the population that votes to beat the other 49% with sticks in a pure democracy, they get to. That's not good. It's not you want to have checks against mob rule. And Andrew made this point, and it got me thinking, where he was critiquing communism. He was saying, well, the problem with having universal suffrage and universal taxation is that eventually you're going to convince the people who are less successful, who are taking government money, to legally steal from the people who have money, because they're going to use the power of the government to do it. Now, but if you look at our government, the way it was created, everything about it was a check against this sort of power. When at the founding, there was no federal tax, so you couldn't reach into your neighbor's pocket. Problem solved. Why do we have the Second Amendment, the First Amendment? It's so that people can't win an election and vote to take away your free speech, to vote to take away your religion, vote to take away your guns. They can't do it. It's taken away from democracy. Why do we have the Senate, not just the House, to give the states a voice? Why do we have the Electoral College? To ensure that big populous states like California, that are very dense in population, don't get to decide who's the president every year and lord it over people who live in other parts of the country who didn't agree when they joined the union to that they were going to be, second-class citizens who were beholden to the whims of big coastal cities for their entire lives. But this is what the Democrats are seeking to do. And once I saw this, you realize everything on their agenda is about breaking down the structure of the government that prevents them from ushering in their preferred utopia, which is, the little man rises up and says, by golly, shouldn't it all be equal, Rob? Shouldn't we have equity? Rob, your show has a few more viewers than other people on YouTube. Shouldn't you have to give your viewers over to smaller streamers, Rob? It seems unfair that you earn those viewers. It seems unfair to me. We should redistribute those viewers. And
I agree. I agree that is where many people are, but that's not, in my opinion, where the leadership is. The leadership merely uses that for the ultimate goal, which is his power. So, for example, do you think for a moment, if that was really their motivation and they lose the popular vote but win the Electoral College in 2028, do you think they'd stand on principle and be like, nah, it's really about mob rule? Of course not. They'd be like, well, fuck it. Fuck that then. Fuck the popular vote. We'll take the Electoral College. That's what they'll do. They could sell this. Like Jordan Peterson talked about this. He's like, we know when the right goes too far. We've seen it, right? We could see places where you could see the right. But when does the left go too far? And with the right, it's easy because most people are somewhat empathetic, or I don't even like that word. We'll say sympathetic, right? And so you see the homeless guy and you're like, I feel bad. Now, maybe logically you could be like, look, this guy's probably made a series of decisions that got him to where he was. But your initial thought as a human being probably is like, that sucks. I'd like to help out in some small way. You're not going to change your life probably to help this person, but that's most of our feelings. So this tool works for the people that want to consolidate power because they play on that. They're like, well, don't you just want to be a decent person? Don't you want to help out the less fortunate? That's what's they don't give a fuck. Orwell talked about this. These people don't give a shit about the less fortunate. They don't care. They just realize by pretending to care about the little guy and the less fortunate, it allows them to enshrine themselves in power. And ultimately what will happen is the little guy and the less fortunate will be the first person fucked over, as we could constantly see in authoritarian communist systems. They're going to be the ones that starve to death, right? That's what happens. And so for me, I agree with where you're going, but it's literally just a naked power grab. And what's striking is how they'll get away with it too if they do it. Because so many people in the like, I use this example a lot. Like when we look at the Vietnam War, you had two basically big institutions in the United States arguing against it, or two coalitions. You had the government and maybe some right-wing-ish institutions that were pro going into Vietnam. And then you had all these cultural institutions, right? Academia and the entertainment industry and, celebrities and all these anti-war songs. The irony is now all of that side that was the pushing against the sort of like institutional government power, they're aligned. They're totally aligned. They were totally aligned during COVID. Like with all those authoritarian, there wasn't hardly a peep from any celebrity, academic, etc. Like, wait, whoa. This is insane authoritarianism. What are we doing here? We're just going to trust these people? They were aligned when the FBI and all these law enforcement agencies are going after Trump. The same people that told you disarm the police, defund the police, all of a sudden when it comes to the most well-funded police agency, the FBI, they're like, yeah, we trust them implicitly. They're going after Trump. And so what's really striking is there's not even the checks of like, well, the people won't accept it. They will. The people will accept it. There is, and like, again, we accepted COVID. And the truth is, if the Democrats did this and they packed the court, people like me and you would be like, this is fucking nuts. This is crazy. And they'd get away with it. And the media would go along and say, this is for democracy. This is to end tyranny. They invert this language all the time. Like, just look at the little fucking ways that they do this. Roe v. the Dobbs decision, right? Mm-hmm. They said it was anti-democratic. Now, democracy, its base root means we each get a say, right? Like, that's the layman's way of looking at it. So the courts ruled, 9 justices ruled, you have a right to an abortion. We didn't get to vote on it, right? And then this court said, nah, there is no constitutional right to abortion. Now you get to vote on it in your state. Mm-hmm. And somehow us now having a vote was anti-democratic. That's the shit that they can usher in tyranny and authoritarianism in the name of democracy and in the name of and so to me it's like the way they invert this language. I mean, they're literally this right now. If for in an alternate universe where this isn't Kamala Harris and no one on the left suggested packing the court, and this is Donald Trump, right now every major, the New York Times, CNN, ABC, CBS are like, this is tyranny. Oh my God, Trump's a dictator. He's going to pack the court. But it's the Democrats, so they're all going to be like, oh, well, yes, the court, they have made some questionable decisions, and there are 13 appellate districts, and so, it makes sense.
Well, this is the reason I was, and I'm going to be talking with Wick about this on Friday, because while I applaud the fact that, while I disagree with Wick on a lot, I applaud that he's combating the DSA. I'm good for him. I'm glad someone on the left is doing it. I don't think he'll succeed, but I'm glad he's trying. He said it was early, that the DSA was appearing. It's not early, because the point you made, Rob, is that it's a power grab, and ultimately they wouldn't, if they didn't have the popular vote, they wouldn't accept that. I don't disagree with you at all. But the way this movement has worked is it had a long march through our institutions, in particularly our educational institutions first. That's where it really took hold and gathered steam. So what they're looking to do is to create tyranny, not in the sense of a king, but in the sense of a faction, right? Where they get a core of people who are indoctrinated to believe the same thing. And then those people will vote for this tyrannical faction to have power over and over and over and over again. And that sort of faction capture is one of the essential evils that our founders were worried about the most. Because when you have that sort of faction that is then going to wield the power of the democratic institutions against the citizens, Roe v. Wade being a great example, you end up in a situation where democracy can be just as tyrannical as any other form of government that's supposed to be, when democracy is supposed to be an improvement. And they've ceded the ground. And you see this because, as you've seen this in New York, but if you look at the stats of who supports the DSA, it's not, to your point, Rob, it's not the downtrodden. The poor don't support the DSA. And it's not people who are successful in business, by and large. There's a few exceptions. The people who support the DSA are people who receive the ideological indoctrination. They got a particular type of degree, but they weren't very successful. So they have financially. So they have a very fancy degree, but they haven't had a lot of success in the business world. That's the DSA's base. And of course they are, because they received a very expensive degree in ideological indoctrination. Now they're loaded up with debt and they're ready to vote to redistribute your wealth to pay off their degree. Of course they are. But this is an insane, un-American power grab. And we're just going to have to keep talking about it till we're blue in the face. I hope our audience doesn't get sick of it, but we're just going to have to keep talking about this because it's not going to go away. This is going to absolutely be the fight in the midterms, and it's going to be the fight in 2028.
And I know, like, the last thing I'll say on this, and then I promise we'll move on with super chats and dovetail into more topics that we have. I know that this line is overused, how important the next election is. And let me say something to push back against both Ryan and me here now, who is going to be talking to you a lot about the importance of participating in our system and voting against this extremism, right? I'll push back a little in saying this. Let's say we lose the House and the Senate. And by we, I mean the Republicans. I don't know why I say we, because they piss me off too in many ways. But fair enough, the side that I will be voting for, let's say they lose. Am I then going to throw up my hands and say, well, that's it. It's all over. No sense ever trying to vote again. Of course not, right? There's always another day, right? It's don't black pill, you know. And everybody always hears this next election's the most important. But there is something unique what's going on here now. And it was unique. You know, the Obama election in many ways laid the groundwork for this, what we saw coming. And then 2020, what we saw with Biden and all the shit in that administration and sort of the power grabs and the corruption and the lawfare against their opponents, right? It's magnifying and it's accelerating exponentially. And there is a chance that this will not be recoverable through our normal sort of voting system if we see these sort of policies implemented. It literally, if they legalize 10 million illegals and pack the court and end the electoral college, I don't know what you do at that point. We literally will become, like, it will literally be the moderate Democrats versus the DSA. That'll be elections at that point. The right will be written out. And all of the horrible things you saw under COVID, locking down churches, or you saw with the Obama administration targeting, you know, right-wing 501c3s, all that shit will be on spades. Disinformation groups that will be censoring like you see in the European Union. So I don't know what to say. And that leads to this super chat. Truth or Vote for $5 says, for the dum-dum saying we should vote Democrats, just remember you're voting for more pardons for people that destroy everything. Smart idea. Yeah, the whole I'm frustrated with Republicans, totally get it. You're frustrated with Trump, totally get it. The idea of voting Democrat, you're really playing with fire. You might just find yourself in a position where that decision, you get what you want, and then it's not recoverable.
Well, I mean, let's make it as simple as possible. The most core part of being in America is that we have a social compact, and we get to decide who's in the club and who's not in the club. From that perspective, the Democrats' refusal to enforce the border during the Biden years, coupled with the abuse of the asylum system that went completely unchecked, coupled with things like the TPS programs going on for decades and decades and decades, though they're ostensibly temporary, coupled with endless lawsuits to end any attempt at immigration, sanctuary cities, blah, 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 basically means that you get no say as to who's in the club and who's not in the club. And that's the most essential aspect of what a country is. If you don't get a say in who's in the club and who's not, then that is a clear form of tyranny. And I think I've seen nothing that would make me think that if the Democrats retook a trifecta in 28, that they wouldn't open up the borders again, pack the Senate, pack the courts. Of course they would. Of course they would.
On this point, real quick, a more of a legal question. I think I know the answer to this. Given what happened with the pardons, like we're talking about Fauci, let's not forget there were a ton of other people pardoned, including Hunter Biden. And this was after, if you remember, the media lauded Biden. Oh, his son's being investigated and he won't pardon. He wouldn't do that. And then, of course, he did at the last minute once it no longer mattered and he was a lame duck and the election was over. Has the precedent been set that it's just smart politics now for every president to pardon everyone they could think of federally as they leave office?
If I was in Trump's administration and I didn't get a pardon on the way out the door, I'd be mad as hell at this point. Because I think that look, you know that this is not something that I appreciate. I think it's a very bad idea to have this like endless cycles of prosecution. But one way out of it is just to pardon everybody, like literally pardon everyone, make it impossible for them to investigate anybody. That might actually end the cycles of prosecution, at least slow it down. So at this point, I think it would be insane. It would be almost malpractice for Trump not to give broad, sweeping pardons to everybody. I mean, everybody in his administration, their families, their children, everybody he can think of. Because if not, I mean, the right now on the left, the most popular agenda is punishing people associated with the Trump administration. That's the most popular item on their list. So in that environment, it's almost crazy not to. And like, look, people give Biden a lot of shit for the pardon, and politically it was very bad, and people, you know, it hurt him and the Democrats, et cetera, et cetera. But like, as a father, I get it. Like, okay, you don't want your son to be prosecuted. I totally get it. And for Trump, I think I think the precedent's been set, and it would be really strange if he didn't pardon everybody at this point. I mean, if I was on his team, I would be advising him to do so, because like every time somebody comes out and says my number one priority is to investigate and punish the Republicans, they are making an argument for sweeping pardons. That's what it is. It's an argument for pardons.
And I think that you'll see, like, if Democrats win, I think it'll be the same. Now, this game still benefits the Democrats because, and maybe we have a disagreement here, you can still have state prosecutions. And in both the prosecutors at the state, the Democrats are more willing, as we've seen, to go after Trump. They'll run on going after Trump and do it. And juries don't give a fuck. Left-wing juries don't care. They'll vote. They could say tomorrow that Trump, you know, sexually assaulted aliens, and some jury in fucking DC would be like, yeah, guilty, you know. So it still won't end it in the sense that it'll just farm it out to the states, but I think it can limit it. And look, I totally agree with you on even Biden. Like, my personal feelings is that despite the narrative that Hunter Biden was protected from a serious prosecution, not just during Biden's term, but even before then. And I think you see whistleblowers at the IRS, whistleblowers at the FBI that talk about this, serious tax evasion crimes, serious FARA violation crimes, and other things. I said it. I predicted this. This is one of my easiest predictions, and I was spot on. I said they'll charge him for any small crime that can't politically be connected to his father. So what perfect then? Well, he wasn't allowed to have a gun, right? But what they won't charge him with is a FARA violation. Because if it turns out that he was lobbying for someone illegally, the next question is, to whom was he lobbying? Dear old dad. That's
does he know anybody else?
Right.
So who else could it be? It's not.
And so it was the easy. So what they did was, it was. I don't want to relitigate this all, but for me, what happened was they tried to give Hunter a sweetheart deal. It became too much public pressure, so they had to slap him on the wrist some way. Right. Remember, it was a judge that came out to the prosecution, was like, "I've never seen a pardon like this." Or not a pardon. I've never seen a plea deal like this. It's basically giving immunity for all this other shit. You remember this?
Yeah.
And like, basically they were like, well, and so then they had to go back to the drawing board, and eventually they came up with this gun charge, and then they swore up and down, see, Biden's an honest man. He's allowing his son to be charged. He would never pardon him. And then the way out the door, he's like, yeah, pardon. And again, I as shitty as it all is, I get it. I would do the same for my son.
Yeah,
I would, especially because it's my belief that Biden was putting Hunter up to being the bag man. So the least he could do is fucking, pardon him on the way out. So, and I'll say right now, as much as I despise and blame the Democrats for starting this lawfare, if I was honest and Democrats win in 2028 and then they're going out the door in 2032, I'd be like, you should probably pardon everyone.
You probably do it.
You probably should. And it sucks. It's fucking despicable that that's where we're at as a country, but that's where we're at. And so I think at this point, Biden was the final nail in the coffin with all of these pardons, that this is the new norm. I would be shocked to see an administration. And the first administration that tries to take the moral high road, I think will regret it. I think that they'll have key members of their administration that will be charged by the incoming administration. So I think that they're all going to play this game for the foreseeable future, like the next 16 years or so.
It's funny, too, because I remember when the Biden stuff was happening, one of the strangest lines was that Biden came out and said that he thought it was a political prosecution of Hunter. And I was like, you're the president.
Right.
Like, who What do you mean it's a political prosecution?
It's your DOJ.
If you everybody involved, you can fire. Like you know what I mean? Like, and I understand that like the left has this view of the decentralized bureaucracy being the unconstitutional fourth branch of government that they would like to make constitutional. So they don't think that way. But I was like, is he really saying that he, the president, is victim to a political prosecution by his own DOJ? And if so, is the only way that makes any sense to me is in retrospect when we saw that he was really, you know, he had kind of lost the plot by that point, and it was a presidency by committee, and that, you know, he'd be like, "Don't prosecute my son." They're like, "Yeah, that's nice, Joe. Go back and have a nice tea. Enjoy your Arnold Palmer." You know, like that sort of thing. Because otherwise, that made no sense. It just didn't.
Well, it's actually genius what they did. Like the way that the left, the Democrats particularly, give talking points to their base it's incredible, right? Because they control so much of these institutions like academia, right? So they'll put out some bullshit report. The right commits more political violence. And then you'll look through it and you're like, what a joke. This is a survey or some shit like that. You know, it doesn't include all the violence we saw in Black Lives Matter or the violence we see against ICE. It ignores all of that. But it doesn't matter because they can appeal to the authority. But the report says it. And that's good enough for 80% of the people. What they did here is they had a kernel of truth. I sincerely believe that Biden's argument and Hunter's argument is correct. That most people would not have been charged retroactively for that gun charge. He's right about that. But that's because most people wouldn't have been left off the hook for the tax evasion and the FARA and shit like that. So in an effort to leave him off the hook, they charged him with something that he probably shouldn't have been charged. The one fucking thing he was accused of that I'm like, nah, they never charge anyone for this. They charge him with that, and now his base is able to say, it was so ridiculous, they charged him for this bullshit crime that hundreds of thousands of people commit, and none of them are ever charged. Right, to protect dear old dad from the fact that they were going after Trump for things like mishandling classified information, which dear old dad was doing, or going after Trump people for FARA violations, which dear old dad and Hunter was doing, right? So that, and in order to protect that, they charge him with the slap on the wrist thing and then later pardon him for a crime that almost everyone agrees is sort of bullshit. And so there's a genius in it where it's like, now when you debate people, you'll debate these lefties and they're like, you know, that charge was bullshit. And this, you talk about who else? Do you think Trump would have let his kid go down for something like that? And it was all set up to give them this plausible deniability, like, well, we're the people that really, you know, are consistent and moral. So I know I didn't plan on getting much into that case today, but what a fucking joke.
Well, like this is actually one of the best arguments for unitary executive theory. When the right says that we want to have the entire executive branch beholden to the president, what we're saying is there needs to be political accountability. Like if the DOJ does something you don't like, where does the buck stop? With the president. The problem when you don't have a unitary executive theory, which the left doesn't believe in, is that you have this like decentralized mess where there's no accountability. So they can say with a straight face, Hunter is being politically prosecuted by a DOJ that I, the president, have no control over, and they diffuse responsibility for the whole thing. And then you get into this game that you're talking about, like, oh, why weren't these things charged? Why was this? Why was this plea deal done? Why was this gun charge charged and not the other stuff? And it's all diffused when in reality, the people should be able to point to the president and say, well, this is all your people, and that's your son, so this is your doing. And nothing else matters. Like there should be no diffusion of accountability. The president is where the buck stops, flat stop.
Yeah, totally get. So let's see some more super chat.
Sorry. Can we, before we do supers, can we just do a palate cleanser? Because I know we got some good supers. This is real quick. It's just me
bring up the
sharing. Yeah, this is one of the greatest memes I've ever seen.
Oh yes.
Did you see this?
Yes. What's the name of the candidate? It's
Oh, what's his name? Troy Jackson. Troy Jackson.
So for those that missed this, Graham Plattner, the guy that had the totem confidant tattoo, was forced to drop out because of alleged sexual malfeasance. And the guy that now is taking his place turns out married his second cousin.
You can't make this up. And if you haven't seen it, Warren Smith put out a video on the main Senate debates, which is the most unintentionally funny thing that's ever happened in politics in a long time. Like it's fucking wild. So if you haven't seen Warren Smith's video on this, go watch it. It's a train wreck. At one point during the debates, you remember the old SNL sketches with Celebrity Jeopardy? Yeah. Where Will Ferrell's like playing Alex Trebek. He's getting so mad at these idiot celebrities, he starts to ask them easier and easier questions, like what letter starts the word house?
Right.
It rhymes with H. That sort of thing. At one point, they're so desperate for any of these goobers to give some kind of policy discussion that he says the question, I swear to God, was, well, Graham Plattner had a lot of policy positions that were detailed on his campaign website. Can you name one of those policy positions that you would keep? Not just name a policy position that you would keep. And none of them could answer it.
Yep.
Not one. So yes, we have managed to replace Graham Plattner with a different socialist who fucks his cousin. Congratulations, Democrats.
It was
you
like
did it.
The moment Kamala lost the election was when they were like, what would you do differently than Joe? You remember that? It was like on The View or something. It was like a toss-up interview. And she didn't have anything.
Nothing.
And like, it was shocking. Like, they hadn't thought of that question. Look, Joe's popularity is way low. So what would you do different? I don't know, basically the same. It's amazing. It's really indicative of just how much, like, I say this all the time. One of the greatest advantages I had coming up in debate in college was being a right-winger, because every little thought I had was challenged and mocked and ridiculed, and by smart people, many of them smarter than me. The left could glide by, never being challenged all through their academic career, right? And when you're a left-wing politician, you can stay in your little bubble with most of the mainstream media, and you're never asked a difficult question. So eventually when you are, it's like, what? You sound like a fucking buffoon, because you're like, what are you doing? That's not your job. You're on my team. You're supposed to give me softballs that I could fucking knock out of the park. What is this? A difficult question? Fuck you. You remember, what was the name of the woman that was running for governor? She's going to win, right? The woman who's going to win the governor in California. You remember that interview she had? Is it Karen Bass?
I don't remember the interview, no.
Let's see if I can find it real quick. It was a disaster. Am I getting the name right? Maybe it's not Karen Bass. She gives this interview, and it was like, it's one of the most disastrous. It's not Karen Bass. What the hell's her name? It's a white lady. And she gives this interview where it's basically like Katie Hochul. Let's see if I can find it. It is unbelievable. She's asked this softball question, and she loses her fucking mind. Like, well, this is literally the Democrat who is going to be, I believe, governor, or is it mayor? I don't know.
I mean, while you're looking for that, I mean, you remember when Ibram X. Kendi, who was for a time the most celebrated academic in the country, couldn't define, and his area of a study was racism. And when asked what is racism, couldn't avoid circularity in a definition. So yeah, this is you live in a bubble. You never get your ideas challenged.
This is Katie Porter, not Hochul.
Oh, okay.
But here we go. Just marvel at this.
What do you say to the 40% of California voters who you'll need in order to win, who voted for Trump?
How would I need them in order to win, man?
Well, unless you think you're going to get 60% of the vote. You think you'll get 60%. Everybody who did not vote for Trump will vote for you. That's what you're thinking.
In a general election, yes. If it is me versus a Republican, I think that I will win the people who did not vote for Trump.
What if it's you versus another Democrat?
I don't intend that to be the case.
So how do you not intend that to be the case? Are you going to ask them not to run?
No, I'm saying I'm going to build the support. I have the support already in terms of name recognition. And so I'm going to do the very best I can to make sure that we get through this primary in a really strong position. But let me be clear with you. I represented Orange County. I represented a purple area. I have stood on my own 2 feet and won Republican votes before. That's not something every candidate in this race can say. If you're from a deep blue area, if you're from LA, or you're from...
Just so you know, the reason this question, her answer makes no sense, is California has the top 2 candidates run off. And so it's Democrat. And so what she's asking is, okay, you might not need Trump supporters, the 40% of Californians that voted for Trump. If it's you versus a Republican, you'll win 60-40. But what if it's you versus a Democrat? You're going to need to convince some of those people. She's like, I don't need them. right? And so you can tell the questioner's like, that's an odd answer. You almost never, as a politician, want to say, I'm not interested in a vote of 40% of the electorate. Just not interested. So watch how this goes.
Oakland, you don't have an experience.
But you just said you don't need those Trump voters.
Well, you asked me if I needed them to win.
So you don't
I
think
feel
you
like
need
this
them
is
to win.
unnecessarily argumentative. What is your question?
The question is the same thing I asked everybody, that this is being called the empowering voters to stop Trump's power grab. Every other candidate has answered this question. This is not
Correct. And I
argumentative.
said I support it.
So, and the question is, what do you say to the 40% of voters who voted for Trump?
Oh, I'm happy to say that. It's the do you need them to win part that I don't understand. I'm happy to answer the question as you have it written, and I'll answer it.
And we've also asked the other candidates, do you think you need any of those 40% of California voters to win? And you're saying, no, you don't.
No, I'm saying I'm going to try to win every vote I can.
That's
and
not
what I'm
what you
saying to
said.
you is that
Well, to those voters. Okay, so you...
I don't want to keep doing this. I'm going to call it. Okay. Thank you.
You're not going to do the interview with us?
Nope, not like this. I'm not. Not with 7 follow-ups to every single question you ask.
Every other candidate has answered
I don't
our
care.
follow-ups.
I don't care. I want.
It goes on, but I mean, that's Democrat privilege. Like to actually have just a run-of-the-mill, hey, how will you get Republicans to vote for you? I can't. No, I refuse. Like, you're just
How
like-
dare
like,
you?
Imagine, like, compare that to the questions that, like, Marco Rubio will field or Hegseth, right? Like, and it's shocking. And it really does display, like, just a total incompetence and and by the way, this is true not just of politicians, of media people, but it's also true of the people that you'll interact with online. There are people that are capable of debating on the left, but so many of the random people are wretched. Like, they've just never run into someone who disagrees with them that can articulate the arguments. They don't know what to say. They're just like, but you're evil. You're a fucking Nazi. So fuck you. Right? Like, so I know
Rob,
we're getting a field
Rob,
of.
he's a 34 count felon. Rob.
Yeah, that's exactly. What are you talking about? I know there was a super chat that went to this. So before I'll look it up later, but I do think it's important to talk about this story. The grocery stores we're talking a lot about socialism from Mamdani, who in many ways at this point, I would say that if the literal, like de facto last person in charge of the Democratic Party was the aforementioned Kamala Harris, the spiritual leader at this point, probably Mamdani. So they're going to have these grocery stores that are ran by the state, which will end up a disaster, but it might look good for a couple years, which is all they need so that they could run on this going into 2028. This is one of the most laughable but shrewd political 40-second diatribes that you'll ever hear. Everything about this is hilarious, so here we go. Enjoy.
How are you going to keep people from taking advantage of that, that deal, basically? And is there going to be a limit on the number of items that someone can take that are discounted at that level from that essential
Can you pause for a
basket?
second?
So our RFP makes very
So before he answers this question, the background here is that not only are they going to do government-run grocery stores, at least that's the plan, which is already a very bad idea and inherently socialist, but beyond that, he wants to sell select goods at a 30% discount off the fair market price. Now, how is that possible, you might ask? Because they're going to subsidize it with your tax dollars. That's the only way that's possible. But then play that forward a little bit. Imagine that you're running a bodega, and then they open up a grocery store down the street that sells everything 30% below market price. You're going to go out of business. You're going to go out of business because you can't compete with a cartel that is undercutting the market using unlimited tax dollars to pay for it. So then small businesses will start to fail in the area around these grocery stores, which is part of the plan. You want the small businesses to fail. You want the landlords to be unable to rent. You want the government to seize more and more property. That's how you enact socialism over time. But anyway, that's what the discount is. They're concerned that people might come in from out of state and take advantage of these stores that are selling things at prices that are not actually fixed by the market, but are instead done by executive fiat and tax subsidies.
Yeah, and I think that, there's all sorts of other problems. For example, what if you're a private-owned grocery store? What do you think's going to happen to you? You're going to go out of business, and then what's going to happen when 5 years from now there's no longer a tax base to fund these? right? Either they go out of business, now you have food deserts, or you just have to brutally increase people's taxes, in which case the ones that could leave are going to leave. It's going to be a fucking disaster. Anyways, the claim is if you could buy things at 30% under market value, how do you know that people from outside of New York that aren't paying those taxes aren't taking advantage, or people aren't buying in bulk and then selling at their own? So here's what he says.
Deal, basically, and is there going to be a limit on the number of items that someone can take that are discounted at that level from that essential basket?
So our RFP makes very clear that this is a program for New Yorkers to be able to put food on the table, not a program for people to be able to make a quick buck through reselling. I'm going to pass it over to our EDC head, G-Pack, to add some additional details.
Yes, if you look at our RFP for the operator, we are looking to make sure that we target New Yorkers, whether it be at sort of a library card-esque thing, and also we manage who's buying, and that is focused on everyday New Yorkers. So
now, you might have missed it there, but she said, we're going to make sure that they're New Yorkers through like a library card-esque thing. You might call that identification.
But Rob, that couldn't be the case, because I've been told that it is impossible for the elderly and especially for Black people to get identification. So are you saying that they're going to have a system in place that disenfranchises huge percentages of the systematically oppressed population from buying groceries? Say it ain't so, Rob. That's not possible.
Well, look at this woman. Like, let's not forget married women who had to change their maiden name. It's damn near impossible for them to get an ID. We know this. Right? Look at this Black woman behind, smiling to hold back the tears as she knows that Black people are about to starve to death in mass. Hundreds of thousands of Black people about to starve to death in New York because you can't feed yourself anymore without an identification. And we don't know. We don't have the technology that would allow Black people to get an identification. It's beyond their means. It sounds racist to say it, but I've been told by the Democrats who are always talking about systemic racism, it's not possible for these Black people to be able to get identification. So I want to know, what is the Democrat plan to solve this? How are they going to solve all of these Black people that are about to starve? I mean, if the Black people don't starve and they're able to get identification, then surely we could say, well, okay, then it's important to do so for voting. I mean, after all, we were told that illegals don't vote, and we just see a story out of New Jersey where that's actually not the case. Right? We had thousands of illegals. By the way, that's just the tip of the iceberg. So surely the Democrats are concerned about making sure that only legal citizens are voting, right? Surely it's just a matter of it's racist to have ID. Voting's important. We could all agree with that, right? But if I had to choose between voting or eating and starving to death, not just as a fat guy, but starving to death, I would choose not starving to death. It's more important than voting. So why are we putting these insurmountable barriers on Black Americans just for them to consume food? How is this not the biggest? I'm so confused. I don't know how it's not the biggest story in the world right now.
It's very odd because, I also was recently told that in order to get a job shoveling snow for the city, you have to show two forms of ID to get a snow shoveling job in New York. So we have ID for job applications, for shoveling snow. You need you need an ID to buy groceries at the city grocery stores. But apparently it's only voting where having an ID is such a monstrous imposition that it triggers all these hardships. It's interesting, Rob, that these hardships are not, they don't really seem to manifest when it's anything other than voting. It's an odd coincidence. So what's really funny, by the way, too, is that New York City, I don't know if you know this, has a local tax. So if you live in New York City, you pay 3 to 4% of your income every year to the city as an additional tax beyond the state tax. And if you you still pay that tax, even if you don't have an ID, you just can't go to the grocery store. So, if people are worried about this sort of thing, you have a situation here where if people can't get an ID for some reason, then they're still paying a local tax and yet they can't eat. It seems like a monstrous injustice to me, Rob.
Yeah, all joking aside, it really just shows they don't believe their own bullshit. It's like this with everything, right? Like, they don't know what a woman is until they do. Only women should have a say in abortion. Now all of a sudden they know what a woman is, right? Like they constantly do this. I go back to the millennial woes. You know, so much of arguing with Democrats is them pretending to not understand things, thereby making conversation impossible.
It's just utterances, Rob. It's just
that's
utterances.
right. That's right. So it's like, oh, ID, you know, of course. Going back to sort of, I had this same argument during COVID with this guy, Dylan Burns, right, who was in New York. I believe he was living in New York. And as you mentioned, there were you had to have certain vaccine passports and identification in order to shop at certain places, including grocery stores in New York City, in some of them. I don't know if it was all, but in some of them. And he supported it. And I was like, wait a minute, isn't your whole argument that this is racist? Well, it's just, you know, at this point, public health, blah, blah, blah. But they always carve out the exceptions when it benefits them. So he, who at that point was covering protest, Black Lives Matter protest, he said the one area you should not have to provide identification is to be at a protest, because the right to protest is important. And so you shouldn't eat. And I was like, but isn't eating important? Yeah, but not as important as the right to protest. And so it's always just, well, we'll pick and choose when this shit matters.
Yeah.
The truth is they all fucking understand it.
It's worse than that, Rob, because in New York City, this is one of the things that like radicalized a whole bunch of people in New York. The BLM protesters got a exception from the lockdown and mask mandates, etc., because a group of experts, the medical board and whatnot, came out and said that systemic racism was a health issue. So they got an exception and they were allowed to protest. But then when people were trying to protest the mask mandate, they were denied their right to protest because emergencies meant that you couldn't protest. So it's not just the one level of exceptions. It's exceptions all the way down, right? And I think this is an easy story to joke about because it's just so transparently hypocritical, but it does actually point at something much more significant, which is that, yeah, like this whole thing about ID being impossible to get never made any sense. Nobody ever believed it, and they don't believe it. And clearly they don't believe it, or they wouldn't be suggesting that you would need an ID to buy groceries.
That's right. And here's the part that is unbelievable, a little meta here. Let's watch this again, and I want to point out something.
How are you going to keep people from taking advantage of that, that deal, basically, and is there going to be a limit on the number of items that someone can take that are discounted at that level from that essential basket?
Now, he's absolutely prepared for this question. Watch what he does.
So our RFP makes very clear that this is a program for New Yorkers to be able to put food on the table, not a program for people to be able to make a quick buck through reselling. I'm going to pass it over to our EDC head, G-Pack, to add some additional details.
He doesn't want an audio clip of him saying you have to have ID, so he'll pass it off, right? Because that'll be bad politics in 2028 when he's running in a more national, or at least people like him are running nationally, against the SAVE Act and against voter ID. They don't want a DSA guy saying, yes, ID is important for this particular service. No, no, no. So he's ready for it. They had pre-planned. I'm not going to say it. I'm going to pass it off to my little henchman. She'll say it. And then we'll move on from it, you know? And so it's very shrewd politically. And of course, the media will allow him to get away with this, you know? And mark my words, it's one of those things. We are inundated with just such a 24-hour news cycle. We won't fucking remember this when he's pushing against the SAVE Act 2 or 3 years from now. We won't remember that. But when you look up, did Mamdani ever say that you need an ID? It won't show up. He didn't say it. Someone else said it. That's the sort of like buffer that they use. It's incredible to watch how they manipulate these things.
I just spotted something that I didn't even think about, by the way. His thing, when they asked him the question, his primary concern was reselling. Because if you're doing groceries at a 30% discount, there's a risk that people are going to say, oh, well, I could just buy that and then sell it in my bodega. Great. Now I'm getting all this cheap stuff. I'm going to resell it and make a profit. And of course, you can't have filthy capitalists doing that. So,
by the way, that is what will happen, and not just at the bodega level. That's what will happen at the individual level, because we already have an epidemic of people selling their food stamps.
Yeah.
So of course, people are going to go in and buy shit out and then sell it to their neighbors.
But
right.
Rob, but think this through for a second. Like, how do you stop people from doing that? It can't just be that you show the ID. Because if you just show the ID, then they could go to 4 or 5 stores, buy all this stuff, and resell it in bulk. You would need to track it. You'd need to scan the ID, and then the city is going to keep a log of what food you're buying.
Yep.
So that they can be like, wait a minute, you bought eggs 10 days in a row, you son of a bitch. Are you an egg capitalist?
Yep.
Are you Rob? Are you selling fucking omelets on the street? Are you an omelet merchant? We don't like capitalism, Rob. We're going to track you down, you motherfucker, buying eggs on your New York City ID. We got you, you bastard. Like the idea that we are going to have a government destruction of the free market where they're going to go under the market consciously, undercutting all the legitimate businesses in the area, and then track your food purchasing via a mandatory ID to prevent the obvious market corrections from taking place. This is as pure neo-Marxist socialism as you could imagine. They're doing it right in front of you. They're telling you they're doing it, and they're hoping that you're too stupid to notice.
Yeah, and it really is. Like when every time the socialists are like, we have this government program for the little guy, it's always results in more surveillance, more control for the government, right? And so it's like, well, we want to give you free food, which means we have to track you, which later means that who's to say selectively that they're not like, well, we think you said some certain things we don't like. Ooh. Now you can't purchase. Or we think that, you're unhealthy. And so, you know what? We've noticed, as someone who weighs over 300 pounds, you've been buying a lot of gluten products. We're going to say no, right? All of that stuff is potential once you start tracking exactly what people are eating. And it's one of the things that the left argues about when I argue about food stamps, like why you shouldn't buy soda. Well, we don't want the government controlling. Once we're paying your bills, we have the fucking right to say what you're allowed to eat. Same thing here. Once you give the government the power to say, okay, we're feeding you, now we get to control everything about it. We get to look in. We get to tell you, monitor what you're doing. In the grand scheme of people that have it coming, this is Galloway. What's his first name? Scott Galloway. He's a very wealthy man, and he supports Mamdani, and he supports Mamdani's progressive tax, one of them that he has, that rich people need to pay more of their fair share. Now, everyone who's ever seen these communist regimes knows that liberals get the bullet too. The lefties get it too. Mm-hmm. That's what happens. This guy was more than happy to embrace totalitarian control through communism, through the election of Mamdani. I'm sure he supported so much of the cultural Marxism against conservatives or white people or Christians or men because he's one of the good ones. He'll use his money to fund it. And so surely that puts him on team good guy. Let's see how things are going for Mr. Galloway.
And I've been doxxed.
You've been doxxed? What? Tell me.
So I don't know if
Wait a
you've
minute,
heard,
Rob,
but Mayor Mamdani has decided.
I've heard in circles like the Destiny DGG Hassan circles that doxing is the most serious crime that one can commit. So surely there was no doxing from a left winger. That would be impossible.
It's not doxing when the left does it. It's just responsible, right? Simple.
Oh, my fault, Rob.
Yeah.
Continue.
Yes.
My bad. I just.
So release a list of the 950,000 residences with addresses and names that might be eligible for his pied-a-terre tax. I came out in favor of this tax. This is the definition. He's taken a legitimate source of tax revenue and he's turning it into a wanted poster. And the question I would have is, other than trying to identify and imply these people have done something wrong, and then 18 months after a healthcare CEO was executed in the street and then published the list, what is the upside here? Why is he doing this? And I've been doxxed.
Yeah. So this is, by the way, in New York City, the pied-a-terre tax is if you have a second home in New York and it's worth more than $5 million, there's going to be a fee, an extra tax assessed because fuck the rich, it's a little bit of a weird thing to do in New York because of all the cities on earth, kind of like the wealthy finance types are literally what makes the economy work in New York. So it's a strange place to try to say fuck the rich because the nature of its economy is really dependent on them. But in any event, he's running on it, and Scott supported it. And yes, they published, and this is big news because this is the area, I live in the tri-state area. They published a list of the 950,000 people who potentially qualify. Not all of them necessarily qualify. So you can look up the address of all those evil rich fuckers and where they live in the city. You can find it. It's all public information. And who doxed them? The mayor of New York. Wild.
I mean, he's like, I can't figure out why he did it. That is the point. You are the enemy. You are the stupid mother. Look, I mentioned this not to get too afield here, but it's very similar to a lot of left-wing academic Jewish types that were more than happy to play the cultural Marxist game. Oh, those evil white people. Yes, academia rife with sort of DEI and cultural Marxism. And the problem is, from their perspective, they didn't realize that the monsters they were creating were like, yeah, white people are evil, and you're white. And they're like, no, we're not white, we're Jewish. Well, to them, you're white. Same thing here. No, I'm not one of the bad millionaires. I supported this. It's cool to go after the rest of them, but not me. That going after you is the fucking point. That's the point. This wasn't some whoopsie daisy. This is the point. You are the fucking enemy. You literally financed, supported, and rooted for people that view you as an existential threat, that you shouldn't exist. That's what you did. And now it's going to be sour grapes. And this motherfucker would have been perfectly fine if it was just the people that were against the tax like you that was doxxed. That would have been fine. Fuck Ryan. He's a bad guy. Fuck Kevin O'Leary or whatever. They're the bad guys. They're the greedy rich motherfuckers that were against the tax. Not me. I'm rich, but I'm for the tax, so I'll be spared. No, you weren't, fuckhead. And I'm sorry. You'll get notice how he says, he's like, well, they killed, what was his name? Brian Thompson, the United Healthcare CEO.
Yeah.
Oh, after that. Sorry. Like, I don't know what to tell you. There have been people like me and you and other right-wingers that were out there saying this is fucking nuts. The violent culture of the left, particularly the extreme left and the progressives, is getting out of control. That you think this guy said a fucking word about them trying to unmask ICE and attacking ICE? You think he said a word?
No.
Of course not.
No.
When it wasn't him, when the violent left was targeting the people he sees as opponents, no problem. The tactics were totally good. Now that it's being used against him, predictably, might I add, just like every communist regime eventually does, all of a sudden there's a problem. It reminds me of 2016 at the DNC. A lot of people don't remember this, but you had Bernie was sort of the left-wing version of populism in 2016, that there was a lot of passion and a lot of these lunatic progressives. Some, by the way, some of the Bernie people were absolutely fine. Don't get me wrong, right? There were legitimate reasons to want populism on the left. Get it. But there were some fucking wackos, right? And they were showing up to like Republican events and fucking like, pulling fire alarms and shouting in bullhorns and all that shit, right? Then when Bernie supporters felt that Bernie was cheated in the primary, I'll leave you all decide whether or not that's the case, they showed up to the DNC convention. And I remember Sarah Silverman was on stage like, would you people just grow up? It's over. Because they were causing a ruckus. They were burning American flags. And see, it was cool when that energy was directed against the Republicans. It was all good in the hood. As soon as it was directed towards establishment Democrats, it was like, whoa, this is unacceptable behavior. Same energy here. And the one thing I always say is, it's horrible to look at things this way. If we lose, if this sort of communist mantra takes over and like Islamist and all these, coalition takes over, the one little petty thing that I'll hold on to is these motherfucking lefties that push for it the hardest are going to be the first people eaten alive by it. The LGBT crowd when the Islamists take over, good luck. The rich lefties that pushed all this shit where the commies take over, good luck. And that's, I'll admit to being petty. I'll smile watching these motherfuckers lose everything that they've ever stood for, every financial decision they've ever had. I'll fucking laugh when all of a sudden, like, fucking women have to wear burqas and shit. The ones that voted for this shit. Not my wife, but the ones that voted for it. Fuck you. That's what you deserve. You predictably voted for this shit. And now, when you just thought, there's a meme that I like that's like, it shows the commies like in has people in a ditch about to end their life, and the one commie turns around, or the one person who's about to get his life ended, and it's like, but comrade, I think there's a mistake. I was supposed to work in the art department. And he's like, shut up, keep digging. Like, that's it. That's so.
I mean, look, you have to understand that the mayor doesn't have infinite power, but within his power, he is doing exactly what you would think a communist would do. And this isn't a secret. There's quotes, you can find quotes of him saying, we need to seize the means of production. Well, you're a mayor, you're not the king, you can't pass laws, you can't change the Constitution, you have to work with the governor. But within the power of mayor, how can you seize the means of production? How can you go about doing it? Well, let me see. Maybe I'll freeze rents and then vigorously enforce codes such that I put a whole bunch of landlords out of business. And when they can't pay the fines because they can't raise the rent to pay the fines, I'll seize their property, being the means of production, in this case, for rent. Oh, well, we can't really stop people from running their own businesses, but we can undercut them with a government subsidized funding. We can make them, with their own tax dollars, pay for the business that destroys their business by undercutting them with a price that nobody in the market could pay, and then make them get a mandatory ID to monitor them while they do it. We could drive the wealthy out of the city by doxing them and targeting them with a specific tax, and try to hope that we can create vacancies and that we get rid of all these undesirable rich people from a city built on the back of rich people in the financial markets. Within his power, he's doing everything you would expect a neo-Marxist to do, and he's doing it quickly. So it's really just a question as to whether people are paying attention to this or not, or more likely, and I think this is the case for people like Josiah and Pisco, who are, I would say, like DSA apologists, who they run around and say it's not that big a deal. We're fighting MAGA. Who cares as long as we're fighting the right? I think if you had them in their secret heart of hearts, gun to their head, moment of truth serum in their veins, they'd say good. Because I've been a neo-Marxist all along. I've been in one all along. I've just learned that it's better to lie to people and tell them I'm not. And that's how I achieve my agenda. That's how we get to the utopia, Rob, one little brick at a time. So I think it's happening in front of us. It's happening right now in front of us. And this is something that people are either going to see or they're not going to see. But a lot of people are blind to it.
All right, let's do super chats. If you have any super chats that you want to put in on me or Ryan's end, as long as it's remotely acceptable, we promise we will read it.
Guys, this isn't Rumble, okay?
That's
this
right.
Isn't Rumble.
There's at least one over on Rumble. I'm like, AJC, $5 says the hypocrisy of the voter ID, which they don't want, but wanting to show certification to enter stores of being vaccinated is crazy to me. Yeah, that's exactly what we're talking about. The hypocrisy is the point. Look, when you believe that there's no such thing as truth and you're morally superior to your opponents, hypocrisy is nothing. The rules don't apply to them because they're good people. They apply to you because you're bad. It's literally that simple. And once you understand that, it's like, I'm not saying it's not worth pointing out the hypocrisy. Clearly it is. So for the normie people that are intoxicated by this, they could hopefully wake up and see exactly what's happening. But yeah, that's it. The rules should never, there are many benefits to being a member of the party, until you're not a member. And then all of a sudden it's not very fun. But on your end, Jefferson $2 says, tried Jersey City. Journal Square was not for me.
I could see that. Journal Square is kind of a very particular area, but Jefferson C. Post, man, didn't realize we were fellow travelers. That's cool.
I remember going to Jersey. I've only been there like once or twice. You're not allowed to pump your gas there.
Yeah,
it's fucking crazy.
Well, but the gas is cheaper.
Yeah. Well, yes. Well, in Pennsylvania, fuck. We have a higher gas tax than anywhere except California.
Yeah, so this is the funny thing about Jersey is that we are not allowed to pump your own gas, but the gas is much, much cheaper than in Pennsylvania, New York, or Connecticut. So, like it kind of makes you feel like a king, right? You're like, I'm getting this real cheap and I'm not pumping the gas.
Yeah, but you got to tip your guy, right? You tip the guy, right?
I don't think you have to tip the guy, Rob.
I tip the guy? You don't tip the guy? Oh,
Rob, you're a slave to tipping.
What is
culture.
happening?
Hold on,
here?
I'm gonna do the Mr. Pink from the Tarantino from
go.
Reservoir Dogs. Yeah, like look, you can tip if you want, Rob, but that's just the bullshit culture. Actually, I don't know if those guys are underpaid. I should look into that.
Blasterbot on your end, $5 says, my beef chuck turned out great. I shredded it and had it on sourdough bread with Switz. My only regret is the smoker is not getting it sooner.
Dude, if you have a yard and you can get a smoker, it is life-changing. It is like you, because the other thing is with a smoker and Blasterbot, I'm 100% with you. You can have the family over, you throw a big piece of meat in the smoker, and it's kind of, once you learn how to do it, it's not like high-stress cooking, and then everybody has a barbecue. It's nice. You can have, it's a very social thing.
Yeah. I also have a smoker. You could use it as a grill as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you just turn up the heat. So it's definitely worth it. They're reasonably priced now, like a medium-sized one too.
Yeah, they've gotten pretty good.
AJC, $10 says, I heard a couple streams ago you and Gully are talking with lawyers about Dinogate, about the results. As the second place winner of Dino Battles, I'll offer Ryan to be my lawyer for an immediate rematch. I don't know what you're talking about. I've been instructed by my attorneys to not comment on the situation. So,
that is a great content idea. The trial of Robnoerr, and we're just litigating the Dino Gate.
Yeah,
but at the instruction of counsel, I think Rob can say no more.
Yeah. Jefferson, on your end, $2 says superdelegates will become a tool for the DSA.
Yep.
Yeah, it's ironically the party that talks to you so much about direct representation and democracy is one of the least democratic superdelegates. How many people got to vote in the primary for Kamala Harris? So it's like they lash out as they condemn you. And, it's about democracy. Not for us, though. For us, we get to pick and choose whatever we want. On my end, Jefferson, then, $2 says, Kamala gesticulates like every bar philosopher.
She has a way about her.
Thank you for the membership, Paul Glaystein. And then Jefferson, on my end, $2 says, education made Charlie Kirk an existential threat. Yes, I totally agree. I say this all the time. He wasn't assassinated for his extremism. In fact, in many ways, he is less extreme than most of us. He's assassinated because he was effective, particularly with young people. And that was the big threat.
Well, and you have to if you understand that the reason that the left feels so comfortable talking about like direct democracy as the way forward is because first thing that they did the long march through was educational institutions. So their belief is that they can control the culture, and because they control the culture, then of course direct democracy is appealing as a means of grabbing power for their preferred ideology. And Charlie was uniquely effective in breaking that. It hadn't happened in generations.
Jefferson, on your end, $2 says the chains of college debt are marionette strings.
Oh, yes. And by the way, imagine thinking that getting governments into the grocery business is going to do good things for you long term. The government got into the education business and the healthcare business. How are prices in those sectors?
Yeah, everything the government gets involved in, the prices eventually go up. Now, I was reading a guy on the Extravaganza, or watching a video of this guy on the Extravaganza, who said, look, the grocery store thing will probably look good for a couple years.
Oh, yeah.
But that's the point, right? Kick the can down the road, right? By the time it's like everything starts to go to pot and all the other grocery stores leave, and then they have to raise taxes and the wealthy people leave because the tax burden on them becomes more, it'll be too late. At that point, doesn't matter. The next elections came and gone. And we've said, other cities want to do this, and let's elect more DSA people. It's always about just kicking the can down the road. This is what I used to tell left-wingers, right? Like young people. I was like, Bernie Sanders isn't going to have to pay back any of the shit that will cost for his socialist dream. He'll be long gone, right? It'll be you, the young people. We're mortgaging your future to live in excess and laziness today. That's what it is. And it's amazing to see how appealing the message is to young people. I'll tell you a real brief story. I knew a kid around that time in 2009 when Obamacare was being pushed for. And this guy, I'm not going to get into too many details, but through some poor decision-making and substances, was in a horrific wreck where he ended up getting life-flighted, and he had a lot of medical bills. Now, weren't going to go to jail for not paying the bills, but nonetheless, he had these bills. So when he heard Obamacare, free medicine, this is brilliant. It's an amazing thing. Of course. And I was like, dude, it's not free. You're going to get fucked. And I could go into the explanation I gave him, but nonetheless, to keep it short, I remember a year and a half later, I saw him after Obamacare came in, and he's like, guess what? I still don't have fucking healthcare, and now I have to pay a tax. Really? They didn't magically wipe away all of your debt? No! Really? I mean, it's that sort of bullshit promises. Free food? Cheaper food? Sign me up. I don't care about the details. You know, send those PPP. I used to say this, like the PPP checks to me was the quintessential socialist policy. We locked down people, we controlled what they were allowed to do, and then said because we locked them down, now we have to give them government money. One of the most disastrous policies that have ever occurred. Signed off on by right-wingers. I said, if I was running for office, I'd be like, fuck it, I'm going to send everyone $2 million checks. Fuck it. Wouldn't you like $2 million? Vote for me. Every American, $2 million. Fuck it. What is anyone going to say? Wait a minute, that's not feasible? You can't just create money? Says who?
Well,
we could just create grocery stores and fucking, right?
Yeah. And, well, this is the thing. It's the great quote, right? Where the problem with socialism is that they eventually run out of other people's money. Yep. And that's the thing. Like it sometimes, if it's a really disastrous policy, it happens quickly. Most of the time, it happens somewhat slowly. But you're seeing this all over the world. Like, I remember a few years ago when people were talking about the American healthcare system, they'd say, oh, well, we should learn from our neighbor to the north, Canada, and places like Denmark and Sweden. Now they just say Denmark and Sweden. Why? Because Canada ran out of money. And they're saying, oh, well, now we have 6 months waits to see a doctor. There's a doctor shortage. Well, why is there a doctor shortage? Because you don't pay your doctors and it's socialized medicine, so no one wants to be a doctor anymore. So, eventually these systems that artificially interfere with human behavior and the free movement of capital, they end up becoming disasters. It just takes a long time. And when it happens, the progressives show up and they go, hey, Rob, this system we put in place, it broke real bad. Could we have more power to
it's your fault. It's your fault. The problem, it's always the same.
If you were just paying your taxes, Rob, you fucking rich bastard, it wouldn't have broken.
Give us power, we'll solve it. And then when you give them power and the problem becomes worse, they're like, it's not that you gave us power that's the problem. It's that you didn't give us enough. So this time, if you give us even more power, we'll solve it. And predictably, when it gets worse, they'll say, you know what the problem was? You didn't give us enough power. So give us more. That's always the answer. There's never a mea culpa. They're never like, you know what? Maybe we shouldn't have done that. Maybe Obamacare was a mistake. Maybe getting involved in the student loan business was a mistake. They'll never say that. They'll always say the solution is more power for us. And anytime, because I used to think this, I was like, let's just have a fucking state or a city. It just becomes total commie for like 12 years and it'll be a fucking disaster. And then we'll be like, see, has that ended the argument? But that's what the Soviet Union was. And it didn't change shit. The people they would just say, it's not our fault, it's capitalism. It's still capitalism's fault. You could have the entire country could become commie for the next 80 years. And as we're in a fucking Mad Max style fucking like desert in the United States now, they'd be like, that damn Trump 80 years ago. That's why we're fucked now. It wouldn't matter. They're never going to change their tune.
So it's really funny. I started doing a deep dive on progressivism in the last couple of weeks. And one of the things I'd always wanted to look at was whenever I talk to a libertarian type, they're really upset about the Federal Reserve. And I've never actually taken the time to look into it. Like, why are they so upset about it? This is my favorite stat from looking into that. Before the Federal Reserve, there was no such thing as cumulative inflation. It just didn't happen. Sometimes the dollar was up, sometimes the dollar was down. But cumulative inflation, the idea that the money you saved is less valuable tomorrow than it is today, just wasn't a thing. Some people say there was like about 4% inflation, is one of the figures I saw in the history of the country prior to 1913. Now, how much inflation there's been since then? Fucking 3,000%. Yeah. A dollar is worth 3 cents. So, and who pays for inflation? Consumers. Yep. Because people who, and I can tell you from experience, because this is something that I have learned about, but like people who have wealth and people who have financial advisors, They put their money in inflation-proof assets. They have it in the stock market. They have it in real estate. They have it in art. They don't lose money on inflation. And the banks are able to buy assets before the inflation happens because the Fed loans them the money. The inflation hasn't hit yet. They buy things with the money, and then the inflation takes off. So that's a 97% tax on the value of like the working people's money, your savings. That's a 97% tax over time. And yet the left view themselves as the party of the workers. They're doing it for you. They're doing it for you. But they've instituted basically the largest hidden tax on the consumer that is imaginable. And this is every policy. It's a power grab, followed by breaking, followed by blaming the other side, and then asking for more power to fix it. Every time.
It's why one of the big successes of Trump, and there's a lot to complain about, but one of the big successes is lowering the size of the federal government, both in the individuals employed by it and by the power that they wield. Because every president in my lifetime, even right-wing ones, those things have increased.
Yeah.
Because it's no one wants to admit it's our fault. We did this. Us that are managing it, we fucked it up. So it's always, well, just leave us manage it more. And then we'll manage it more. And we'll manage it more. Here's a way, this is a gross oversimplification. I'm sure someone that knows more about economics will yell at me, the least of which is that we now have fiat currency and fractional reserve banking. But just think, if you think of money as just like an IOU, right? Like if money was just a piece of paper that said, this represents one apple, right? And that was it. Our whole trading was just pieces of paper that were each one represented one apple. And we're all going to leave the apples with you because you got a nice cave. Right? And so there's 100 apples and we make 100 slips. If tomorrow you decide to fraudulently make another 100 slips, now each slip's only worth half an apple, right? There's 200 slips, 100 apples. So now me holding my one slip just lost half of the value of it, right? Instead of one apple, now it's worth 50. But it doesn't work exactly like that, right? The way it works is it takes time for people to realize, right? And so who wins? The person that gets access to the created money first.
Yep.
Right? And so when we have like the creation of money, the people that win are the wealthy, connected people that have access to getting that money first. Because there's going to be a lag between when you create the money and when ultimately the devaluing of the money happens. The person that loses the most are regular people that don't have access to getting that created money. They're the ones that are holding on to the money, the savers. The average consumer, they get fucked. And it's far more complicated than that, but that's the gist of it. And it's like, yeah, so we have this system where the government keeps getting involved, and every time they get involved, the person that gets fucked the most at the end is the people on the bottom. And so then they're like, well, here's what we'll do. Because that person's getting fucked, now we'll intervene to help that person. But oftentimes there's problems, fraud, inefficiency, etc., even with trying to help them. And then all it does is now there's a new bottom. And so increasingly what you've seen is the new bottom, which is, the working class people that aren't getting those benefits, welfare and shit. And eventually what happens? One by one, they're like, fuck it. Why even try anymore? At this point, it's more lucrative to just say, fuck it. I'll fake a disability. I'll collect welfare. Fuck it. I've seen it happen. And so now the people that are contributing are less and less, and we're supporting a greater amount. And what happens is gradually we're just went from a robust middle class to haves and have-nots. Right. And it keeps chipping away at the bottom. And we have the top people that are paying more and more. Many of them have benefit, though. They have access to that cheap money as it's being printed. And so who gets fucked the most? It's basically the working class. That's who's getting fucked at this point. And by the way, that's why for a long time, the Democrats were the party of the very rich and the very poor, because those were the two that benefited from these policies. The working class, you're fucked. You're just paying into a corrupt system that's going to keep fucking you over. And this was the form of populism, basically, that Trump was running on, talking about average blue-collar Americans, manufacturing sector, etc., that used to be like a stepping stone to the middle class for people that worked hard. And increasingly, it's becoming a pipe dream. And so what are people going to do? Well, they listen to left-wing populism. And left-wing populism is basically socialism. It's just, we'll give you free shit. Well, your groceries, we promise to make your groceries half as expensive. How? We'll tax the rich. But mathematically, that doesn't work out. It'll work out. You'll see. We'll just print more money then.
This is why I wish more people would spend. I wish the Trump accounts were getting more press, because this is, I think, really one of his best ideas domestically. The idea that, like, okay, we're going to create an account where you can, for when you have a kid, we have an account. I think that for a few years, they're going to seed it with $1,000. That might not be permanent, but for kids born in the next bit of time, you get $1,000. But it works like a 529 investment account. Basically, it means that you put money in and it gets automatically invested into a blend of funds, and it's making the investment with the idea that your child will not use this money until they're an adult, 18 or older. And it starts accumulating money tax-free, and then the child can withdraw it down the road, maybe when they're 18, but hopefully not. Hopefully they hold on to it till they're an adult. They need a down payment on a house or something like this, and then they withdraw it. But the idea there is that this allows people who are in more of a working class posture to benefit from the stock market, to create wealth for their children, which is what I think everyone wants. They want their kids to be doing well. And, a lot of times I hear it's too complicated. People don't know how to invest. They don't feel comfortable doing it. But having an account where it's like, all right, I'm going to put in $50. I'm going to put in 10. I'm going to put in whatever I can do, just a little bit of an investment in my kid's future, and you start early and let it grow over time. It's a tremendous investment in your kid's future. I think it's the sort of thing that could create real wealth for a lot of people if they're diligent about it, and it could change a lot of families. It change their entire lives for the better, and it's barely getting talked about right now in media. It's a tremendously good idea, and I hope people are spreading the word about it.
Yeah. All right, more super chats. I got a Trump account for my son, by the way. My wife the other day, I was like, yeah, we got to do this. The other day, she's like, it went down 16 cents. I was like, oh, shit.
Oh, yeah. Tell her to chill. Tell her to chill. Look at it in 10 years and tell me how it did.
Mr. Brass, $5 says they found cocaine in the White House and pointed to Hunter. I stood up for him and said, that could be any of our politicians cooking. Sure.
I mean, fair enough, Mr. Brass. And from what I can tell, Mr. Brass, it could have been your cocaine. Were you the one who planted in the White House, Mr. Brass?
In fairness, that's not the worst thing during the Biden administration we saw in like our political buildings. I don't know if you remember that video that went viral of the two men having a lot of fun in after hours.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Gosh. On your side, Synaptic, $20 says, hope you're both having a fantastic evening. I was curious on your collective take for the midterms with what appears to be the probing attempts of the Dems fishing for an alliance with the Fuentes-Tucker style right. Cheers. Yeah, I mean, I talk about this a lot. I'll just say this. I think Republicans are staged to definitely lose the House. And I would put it 55% they keep the Senate, though that's dwindling every day if something doesn't change. But I would still think they barely hold on to the Senate. I think that voting third party or voting Democrat, like you hear some of those dissident right-wingers suggesting, is despicable, as we talked about earlier. You're really playing with fire and something that might be irreparable if they get into power.
Well, and this is, I mean, like, the obvious reason why, like people like Andrew and you and me have been like picking the fight about the Charlie Kirk, Tyler Robinson thing is that these conspiracy theorists are insane and that they're dancing on the grave of a great man and also one of the most effective institutions in creating actual voting base for the right. But that last part is part of it. It's not just that they're doing something ghoulish. It's that they're doing it at the expense of the right-wing party that they ostensibly are members of. And I do think that there's a faction of the right that is growing in popularity that does need to be fought. Like we can't be the party of like endless Mossad conspiracy theories. Like that's not a real coalition. That's not going to get you anywhere. Like you're never going to get electoral power. You're never going to win an election. You're just going to be sad jokes who are sitting there with your meme about Mossad watching the Democrats pack the court. That's how that ends. Truthfully, that's how that ends. It's a sad fucking story, but people need to wake the fuck up and say like, oh, actually, it does matter that in a two-party system, you support the side that you think is going to do better for you long term. And if you're voting for the other side, that'll fucking show them. We'll drive into the train. I got news for you. This is going to end in tears. It's not going to work out the way you think. You're going to hand them power, and they're going to do something with it that's going to be very, very hard to undo.
Yeah, and for me, it's like I'm even open to the argument. Fine, let's hear it. But when you ask the argument, like I watched Steven Crowder talk to Nick Fuentes about why we should vote Democrat, and it's shocking how little of a plan there is. I'll try to steelman the position. We need to have leverage against the Republicans to push back against Israel and to push back against what we want with mass deportations. And so therefore we'll vote Democrat. And by doing that, they'll start to impeach Trump and have a bunch of investigations into Trump that will smear J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio. And then we have a Groyper presidential candidate in 2028 who will go on to win and then put this country in the right direction. And you may ask questions like, who will this candidate be? We don't know. Where will this candidate get fundraising? We don't know. Where will this candidate get a ground game? We don't know. Why wouldn't the party go back to the old institutional structures if MAGA dies, such as a Mitt Romney or Jeb Bush, which you hated even more? We don't know.
Isn't there
a
risk that all these impeachment investigations are going to cause the Democrats to win in 2018?
Correct. And right, so this could help Democrats more likely to win in 2028. And beyond that, right, it's like, what is your plan then if Democrats do all this horrible shit? Right? Like, why aren't you acknowledging how bad it could be? Well, it's a risk we're willing to take. I think that many of the people that buy into this stuff don't have children, and they're really accelerationists. I think that's what's going on with a lot of them that support this. They're like, fuck it, bring on the end times. Bring on the Civil War. That's what we want. And you have no idea how horrific that could get at all. And so that's why people that black pill and say vote Democrat or black pill and say just stop trying to vote within the system, I think it's a huge mistake. It's exactly what the very people that you dislike want you to do. They want you to say, yeah, there's no hope. Great. Stay home. And by the way, here's the other thing. I can criticize myself for this as well. I should do more in primary supporting people, etc. I've done some, but I'm not going to bullshit you. I could do way more. But many of these people that are throwing up their hands and saying third party or throwing up their hands and say vote Democrat or never vote again, what have they ever done to try to work within the system in the primaries? Next to nothing, right? And so instead of actually understanding that for better or worse, we have this two-party system, and the best way to affect political change is operating within that system through organizations that you might not like big organizations such as, Turning Point, or working through other sort of organizations, or working through the Republican Party at your state level, working through the primary system, all of these things that you don't have to sell out, that you could try to give your input and steer things in the right direction. People just say, nope, I'm pure. I won't do that. Vote Democrat. And I don't know what to say other than that black pill just ensures that ensures a loss.
Well,
and so,
this might be unfair, but the way it looks to me is it's a bunch of people who don't actually want to wield power. What they want to do is perpetually be able to run with the kind of like victimhood narrative, where it's like, oh, everything's against us. Everything's against us. Everyone's against us. But then when they get people to come to their position and they're at the precipice of actually being able to institute change, they actually don't want to be responsible for it. They would rather be in the position of pointing out that something's wrong than in the position of righting the ship.
And you're always a contrarian, you're never wrong, right?
Yeah.
That's,
And this is the thing, like if people say, is Tucker going to run for president? He might. I don't think he wants to be president, though. I think that would be a disaster for him. I think he wants to, he might want to run, but I don't think he wants to be president. And there's a difference there. Like I always say this, there's so many things I'm critical about Trump about, but at least he said that there were these problems, and then he put his hat in the ring and he said, okay, I'm going to take a swing at this. It's not all working out. There's a lot of stuff he's doing. Like we were talking about Trump accounts. It's like, it'd be great if you controlled the spending. That would also be great if we didn't have to abandon financial conservatism. There's so many things, right?
Yep.
But, you gotta have respect for the people on your side who are willing to take a swing and govern, because not everyone's willing to do that. And I think a lot of people prefer not to. Like you said, contrarianism is a hell of a grift.
Yeah. Jefferson, on your end, $5 says, I saw a story in Massachusetts, or is that Maine?
I think that's Massachusetts.
Okay. About EBT trafficking. Non-perishable EBT and food bank goods were being gathered up and sent abroad to be sold in stores. Yeah, this happens all the time, both at a large level and at the individual level. you can find story after story. If you know anyone in a city that's on food stamps, they'll tell you a story about selling their food stamps. Either directly sell them to people that then go swipe the card, or they'll buy high ticket items, lobsters, steaks, and then sell those, and then go buy cigarettes or booze or drugs. So yeah, this shit happens all the time. And so certainly stores are doing it as well. There was a big expose a couple of years ago, I remember, not just in New England area, but it was around the country where they were pegging all these stores for food stamp fraud. And there was a crackdown. A couple people got arrested, but not as many as should. It is endemic. When the government gives out money, and eventually waste and fraud will follow. Every time.
Every time. It's funny because the left is now very angry with him because Bill Maher said that his vote's in play in 28. But he certainly has his share of TDS, but he has his head on straight about some stuff. And he did say a while back about COVID, the government only moves money in leaky buckets, and that's 100% true. Like anytime there's a program, you're going to find that sort of leakage. It's just 100% happens. And by the way, I take it as a positive that a guy like Bill Maher is saying his vote's in play. Like, do I think he's really voting right? No, I don't really think so. But I think that he is a fair bellwether for like the normie left-leaning voter. Like he's not like not the hyper online type, but the normie left leaner. And if he's that turned off by socialism, that the DSA is going to make him think, maybe Rubio's better than that. That's interesting. That's an interesting data point.
Yeah. Jefferson, on your end, $2 says homeless bulk shoppers is the workaround. Yeah.
Oh, not just the workaround, because here's the thing. You need homeless bulk shoppers, but Jefferson, if the homeless can't buy the food, doesn't that cut against the whole thing? Isn't the whole point of the program to give the homeless the access to the cheap food, but they need an ID? And you know what, Rob? While we're giving them the ID, shouldn't we register them to vote? And if we're registering them to vote, isn't it just inconvenient for them to have to drive to take their ballot themselves to drop it off somewhere? Maybe we should just harvest the ballot while we're there. Yep. So yeah, I think it all comes together.
Totally agree. Truth Revolt, $5 says Rob the egg merchant. That was prophesized 3,000 years ago. Oh man,
that sounds this sounds like a spinoff. We should have a Rob the egg merchant show.
Jefferson, $2 a million says Mamdani working to build Miami's Wall Street.
Yeah.
FDNY, $5 says I still to this day find it fascinating that Joe Biden pardoned his son for violating laws that he helped in a large way pass in the Brady in 94. It's very funny.
That is very funny.
Philip Coggins, excuse me, on your end, $10 says, with the commie takeover, we get to tell biggest lie ever told. I hate to say I told you so, but I told you so. Yeah.
Yeah. But by the way, just Philip Coggins, just be real. Nobody ever gives you any credit for it. I'm just going to let you know, like you can prophesize these things. You can tell them it's going to happen. Nobody gives you credit for it. This is what I'm going to talk to about with Wick on Friday, where a year ago I was saying, I was still in my centrist phase back then. And I was saying, like, it seems like the left is using Trump and to obfuscate the fact that they're organizing around some really bad ideas like court packing and abolishing the Electoral College and socialism. And everyone's like, you're crazy, Ryan. Oh my God, why does this bother you? Why aren't you talking more about Trump? A year later, they're doing all of the things that I said they were doing. 100% of the things I said they were doing, they are actually doing. How many people on the left will give me credit for being correct about this? I'm going to set the over-under at 1. They will, because the answer will be 0. It will be none.
Yeah.
The same.
Look at the Fauci shit. Look at the Fauci shit. Who's been like, oh, you guys are right. This guy was a megalomaniac. It's just, moving on. So yeah. EOD, $10 says, with these policies, New York City will dry up into a husk of its current glory. How long until establishment Democrats put their foot down and say, this has gone too far? They can't right now, right? Eventually what will happen is they'll have an establishment like a more moderate Democrat that'll run against Mamdani. But in many ways, the damage that he's doing might be too late. It's a knock on Trump's tariffs policy as well. One of the most important things for a business owner, or for that matter, a very wealthy person, is predictability. you would even be willing to pay a little more in taxes if you knew that the system was going to be that way for the next 20 years. And when you see, I remember Kevin O'Leary talking about this, the Shark Tank guy with the Trump case with his property, right, where they sued him for $500 million. And he was like, everybody does this. No one's going to want to do business in New York anymore. Like, it's just fucking insane. And if they could just snap their fingers and all of a sudden tax the shit out of these business owners, and, you know, they're putting in for example, landlords, they're putting in regulations and rent control that make it impossible for you to turn a profit and manage a property.
Yep.
So eventually what they do is, once it becomes impossible, they then take control of the property and the state owns it. It's going to be a hard sell once that becomes the norm 4 years from now to convince people to come back from Miami or from Texas and be like, yeah, come back. We won't do that shit again. They're going to be like, we're good.
No,
good luck.
we're enjoy that. Enjoy it. We're done.
So,
yeah.
But yes, there will be an attempt eventually to try to walk it back and to pretend like, you know, I don't know how bad things would have to get in New York for them to ever consider voting for a conservative. Like, I just don't think it's possible, because the demographics are such that the more moderate left-wingers are going to leave. And so you're going to find yourself in a spiral where it's like the more radical person's going to constantly be pushed to the foreground. I think eventually cooler heads will prevail and you'll get a more moderate lefty, but they won't be willing to do what needs done. Truth Revolt $5 says, have either of you watched the recent animated film Animal Farm? I'm indoctrination maxing my kids with it.
I have not seen it. Is it good?
I heard it was commie bullshit is what I heard.
Yeah.
I heard that it was criticizing capitalism instead, but I don't know. I haven't watched it myself.
Yeah, a little bit of an inversion of what it was supposed to be.
And then James, $5, says, anyone took my super chat idea to increase the Imperial Senate so there is one representative per 30,000 people? No.
I feel like this is.
We'll keep taking your money as you talk about it.
Your money to talk about it, but when I say that I'm concerned that the left is trying to take the guardrails off of the system to make it not a republic but a direct democracy, that sort of seems like a step in that direction.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not feasible. There would be infinite problems with it. But thanks for the money. Ask again next time.
If we ask again next week,
$50, maybe we'll change our minds.
As capitalists, we are open to suggestions.
That's right. So that's pretty much it for the show tonight. We had other topics, but there's always another day. What do you have going on this week? Or, you know, it'll be 2 weeks till we're back again. You got anything exciting? I know you have some debates and conversations.
The conversation with Wick is on Friday. I don't know if that's going to be a debate or a conversation. Could go either way. Whenever I talk to Wick, there's a decent chance I get ambushed by somebody in the DGG verse. So that certainly could be coming up. And I've been teasing a bit of a channel announcement, but I can't talk about it yet. So I feel like I can't get into it, but since I can't get into that, I will say I'm going to commit now to having a Rob Noerrder debate review. Rob vs. Lonerbox. That's going to have to happen. And I don't know if she's watching or not, but this is I say this being no fan of owlishness, but her debate on Word War Debate Contender Series debuted today. And in this commentator's opinion, she won. Now, that had more to do with the fact that her opponent was speaking in tongues the entire time and doesn't seem to be able to connect two thoughts in the English language. But given that playing field, I thought she won and should advance to the next round. So I don't control the voting, but congratulations in advance to owlishness.
Yeah, they started putting those debates up on.
Yeah, they just started posting them. Hers was a fucking train wreck. Molyneux multiple times was to her. I mean, we saying to her opponent, like, you need to articulate a point. You have the affirmative position. You can't just say random words and connect them in some kind of word salad, because you have the affirmative. You lose by default if you don't make a point. It was getting kind of out of hand. So, but anyway, I do think she won.
Yeah, they can find that over on Word War Debates YouTube, correct?
Yeah, Word War Debates now putting those out. I'm more excited to watch the Rex Jones Jr. one, the Rex Jones one. See if he got mauled by Andrew a few times, but
right.
worse people than him and better people than him have gotten mauled by Andrew. I don't think that's a fair way to judge his debate capacity. I'd be more interested to see how he does in a more neutral setting. And then there, you'll see some with a very charming, lawyerly moderator. So if you want to see me moderate some debates with people like Cool Vic and Kung Fu Joe, those are coming down the pike.
All right, yeah. I will be doing normal shows here. Feeling a little ill tonight, so I'll probably end a little early tonight. But I do have a debate on Brandon Straka's Walkaway series of debates in person coming up. That's Saturday in Dallas. So I probably won't be streaming Friday. Normal schedule stream for me, 10 p.m. Eastern time on Normal America with Rob Noerrder, YouTube and Rumble until Friday. That debate, it was going to be me and Rachel Wilson and another person, but I think Rachel had some stuff going on. So I don't know who my partners are. I know the only opponent I know is Alex Stein, and it falls under this is all I've been told about it's conspiracy theories. And so I was told that moon landing, space lasers, and Charlie Kirk will come up. So that's what I was told. So I'll give my feelings to the best of my ability as I believe the negative. But again, details are sparse. I don't know where you'll be able to watch that, presumably on Brandon Straka's YouTube channel. But yeah, that's what I have coming up. So
sounds good. And I hate to say this because you're feeling ill and it's going to put more responsibility on your shoulders. But when we end stream, I'm going to raid all my chat over to you. So now you get to stay up late entertaining these fucking degenerates.
I will try my best to some degree. Well, Ryan, it's always a pleasure. Can't wait to do it again. And yeah, I thought it was a good show. So hopefully your moderation and conversations and debates go very well.
Welcome back, Rob. Good to have you around, and we'll see you soon. Everybody enjoy being sent over to Rob Noerr's show.
Thank you.
See you later, Rob.
See you. All right, let's do this. Man, I can tell I have a fever. I don't know what the fuck's going on. Just bullshit. Over on Rumble, Beakster, $5 says Kamala isn't black, she's curry. I assume you mean Indian. James, that was on your end. How much for free member chat is good enough on Ryan's end? So, thank you for the raid, Ryan. Really appreciate it. Let me switch my branding. There we go. And I'll go over here. $85. Thank you guys that donated tonight. I appreciate it. Yeah, so here's the link to my debate with Lonerbox. I didn't think it was a particularly close debate. But I haven't read the comments or anything. I'm assuming he has a lot of fans that'll say he won. But there's the link. You can watch it over on the YouTube channel of Modern Day Debate. Maybe we'll cover that tomorrow. We'll look at some of that debate. I'll review my own debate. Yeah, that's lazy. People like that, right? By the way, I fixed my issue I was having last night with like the crazy screen popping up. You know what it was? A fucking game control plugged into my USB. I looked it up online and it was like unplug your USBs and I fixed it. So Old Joe, $5 says, Rob, was your insistence on making eye contact with your debate con victim at Lonerbox strategic or personal? Strategic. I always want to make eye contact with my opponent, particularly in person. It's not personal. I would do it with anyone. I think that it's polite and it's also kind of shows a confidence. Yeah, we didn't on day shift need whip songs to make goals. That's true. We're only 25% of the goal tonight. I think we're going to lose tonight. Yeah, I haven't heard any feedback from the debate on people, positive or negative, other than the people that saw it live that were like, yeah, you did very good. But I haven't heard. I assume there's people that think that I'm, a fascist myself and this, that, and the other. So, whatever. Let me see here. Do I have anything I wanted to talk about? 1 second. I'm going to do this. Bear with me for 1 second. Bring something up. Boop, boop, boom. If you missed it, I did the extravaganza over on the Crucible's Rumble channel. That's still up. So you can check that out if you like. So if you go to Rumble and check out The Crucible, the latest episode there will be me. I think it's going to be me and Mr. E for the rest of the week with that. So thanks, Raceland. I appreciate it. Any litigation updates? No. The Dino Battle stuff continues. Listen, I hate to do it to y'all, but unless we're just going to move on to the whip portion tonight because I'm not feeling great. So we're just going to not a fascist. I'm just a fascist bitch. Nice one. Pillow Mike Logic. Pillow Mike Logic. Nice. You're just a fascist bitch. You say as you're biting a pillow for your boyfriend. Got it. Oh, the in real life stuff. Nah, I don't have anything to talk about with the lawsuit. Green tea helps with coughing. Oh, yeah. I will be heading to bed here soon. So, apologies. Portion of the show where we just do grifting, where we do whip songs. Any $100 donation spins the whip wheel. 150, pick a specific song. $200, you can create a new one. We have none. I owe 0. I'm fine with that. I'm fine with going to bed. I just feel like shit. So, if anyone's insistent that they want to send me money to play a stupid fucking song, I guess I will. But I'm fine with not as well. I think it's the opposite. I think last night crushed me. But I'll take some ibuprofen or something, and I'll be back tomorrow. But 11 stream. There you go. Well, it's 11. Someone's gonna get us to $100 if they want one. All right. Well, I want to thank my editor Black Elk and all of my mods. I want to thank Ryan Mullally. Really appreciate it. Also want to thank everyone who donated tonight, chatted, etc. You guys are the best. Wade Boggs is going to donate $11. I'll wait. But I love the shows with Ryan, but ironically, because they're earlier and because there's 2 of us and the nature of it's a conversation, not as many people tune in, which is unfortunate because I think we have some really good conversations, but I don't give a shit. I'm going to keep doing it. Oh, look at that. $10. Andrew's going to be on Tucker Carlson, right? Crazy. I've not heard that. I did not. Oh, Wade says, who's got the $1? But that's already. Thank you. All right. Play one of these stupid songs. I could do one. I'm capable. I could do this. Oh boy, Abby, thank you so much for the $20. It's toward the whip. Thank you. I appreciate it. Punk mashup. That sounds awesome, doesn't it? It'll make me feel better. A punk mashup. Okay. There you go.
There's a way. Well, there's a way. There's a way. march all day, all day, all day. Where there's a way, there's a way. Where there's a way, there's a way. There's a way, there's a way. Where there's a way, there's a way. A crack on the back says we're gonna fight. We're gonna march all day and night and more, for we are the slaves of the Dark Lord's war.
Hey, all right. All right. Is that it? Yeah, I feel you, M. I don't pick the songs. I just play them. I think we're going to raid over to Cool Vic. So if people are done donating, which, by the way, I do thank you all for that. I sound like a fucking curmudgeon-y asshole. You guys are very generous that donate to me. And I do really appreciate it. But man, it's been a busy day. Did I say Cool Vic? Oh no, fuck. Yeah, okay. If Cool Vic's on, we'll raid him. I pick someone else, but as long as I change it before I say, we'll be all right. Yeah, Vic's on. Let's do that. Andrew hinted he was going to be on a podcast, but wouldn't reveal which one. I know he's busy, but I don't know exactly what. So, all right. I'm going to end it. I appreciate you all. 36% is weak. I'll yell at you all tomorrow when I'm feeling better. All right. Thank you so much, all of you. I really appreciate you all. You guys are the best. Even a night like tonight where we didn't meet the goal, I can't thank you all enough. Really, your support is incredible. It means a lot to me, so thank you. Take a moment and think about Austin Hall does win. That bastard Austin Hall. Take a moment and think about the life of Charlie Kirk and how they killed him, mocked his death, mocked his family, blaming his family. And never forget what the stakes are. Don't forget that these are human stories, too. He has daughters that'll grow up without a father now. And it's all just a big game to these people on the left. So say a prayer for him and his family. And never forget what the stakes are, why we have to keep pushing forward, even if things don't look the best politically. Thank you so much, everyone. We'll see you all tomorrow, 5:30 Eastern time on the Crucible's Rumble channel, and then I'll be back here at 10 p.m. Eastern time. As always, everyone, have a good one.
Only in America is it possible to say, you know what, I don't like the way the country is going, and to do something about it. Take that risk. Take that leap of faith. Stay involved. Trust God and act obediently. Romans 12:2 verse. That God will use all things, for good for those who love him. It's bigger than you. I want you to remember that. It is bigger than you. It's bigger than me. You are here to make somebody else's life better, the pursuit of liberty and freedom. You know what gives me strength? The hundreds of thousands of you that say, Charlie, keep going.
1 Corinthians 5 and 15. So that's all pretty amazing evidence, not just intra-biblical evidence, but extra-biblical evidence that Jesus Christ was a real person. He lived a perfect life. He was crucified, died, and rose on the third day, and he is Lord and God of all.